Lauren Donnelly, who's in our news center with news headlines. Hi.
Good morning. An assault charge has been stayed against an RCMP officer who kneeled on a man's neck during an arrest. The former head of Ontario's police watchdog says the decision sends a troubling message. I'll have more on that. And it was a disappointing night for Bombers fans for the second year in a row, a loss at the Grey Cup final. We'll hear what the team thought about how they played in your next local news. That's all coming up.
All right. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was so disappointing, but I'm sorry, Montreal, who's not smiling for them after they won the Grey Cup last night? Even me. And everyone knows I was cheering for the Bombers. So congrats to Montreal. We'll get some analysis of the game and also talk about where the Bombers go from here. So that's next. Brittany Greenslade, as you heard, has been covering the game, and she's going to be on the program as well. So good morning to Travis Peterson, who is here behind our YouTube station this morning for CBC Manitoba. Good morning to Pat Kanuga, who directs the show and covers weather traffic. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls, and you just heard from Lauren Donnelly. We're on until 8:37 a.m. If you want us in the commute, if you need to update something, 788-3093 is where you can reach us. Well, coming up on the show in the first hour, right after World Report, a local Sconan, Manitoba resident receives the doll of her dreams to add to their extensive doll collection. A Barbie of Wilma Mankiller, a Native American Barbie sent to them, signed by the doll's designer. We're going to talk about what that means to them. So stay tuned. That's coming up in the first hour. Also, speaking of things that matter to people, we're going to talk about children in a different way. We will look today at what it would actually take to institute a universal program for schools, meal program in schools across this country. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that. It was one of the promises that the NDP government actually made to fund that kind of a program when they were on the campaign trail. So we'll look at that from a national perspective. Stay tuned.
On Cue with Tom Power.
After writing hit songs for the likes of Adele and the Chicks, Dan Wilson returned to his band Semisonic to make their first album in more than 20 years. Dan will tell you about the band's breakout hit Closing Time and what he's brought back to his band for making all those hits. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Ithel Musa. There are reports of heavy fighting around yet another hospital in the Gaza Strip. That sound you hear is from video recorded near the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. It shows Israeli tanks stationed outside. Medical workers say nearly 700 people are sheltering in the facility, and dozens of people were killed or injured in airstrikes overnight. Meanwhile, a group of Canadian MPs are visiting Israel today. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with that part of the story. Janice, what's the reason for this trip?
Well, this is a bipartisan group of MPs that are in the region today. Two Liberals from the government side, Anthony Housefather and Marco Mendicino, as well as three representatives from the Conservative caucus, part of a larger delegation of about 60 from Canada, which also includes leaders from Canadian Jewish organizations. Their stated goal is to take some meetings, give MPs a better understanding of what happened in Israel when Hamas attacked on October 7th. Housefather said earlier today on a social media post that they have met with the survivors of the Hamas attack on the Kfar Aza kibbutz. He said this trip is, quote, a solidarity mission, and that the MPs understand why Israel never wants to let this happen again. He gave a phone interview to CBC News over the weekend. He said he wanted to make sure that it was clear to the Israelis that Canadians are allies, and also remind them of the overall approach of the Canadian government, which includes a track record of casting votes siding with Israel at the United Nations.
The Prime Minister has faced some criticism from Israel for comments he made last week. Is that expected to come up on this visit?
Well, the trip was planned before that happened, but Trudeau on Friday was not backing down from his comments that criticized the killing of civilians during the Israeli military operation. And Trudeau restated that, yes, Canada supports Israel, but he still has concerns about how this operation is taking innocent lives. A reporter tried to clarify his message last Friday in San Francisco, and this is what he said.
I noticed, though, you're not using the expression maximum restraint.
Oh, sorry,
Why
maximum
not?
restraint.
Okay, fair enough.
Trudeau said there are a lot lot of things that are very worrisome that those watching around the world and in Canada don't entirely understand, and that when he talks to the Israelis, he asks for everything to be done, because it's not only heartbreaking to see the loss of women and children, but it also hurts Israel's ability to come to a long-term, stable, two-state solution with the Palestinians.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa, thank you.
You're welcome.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Kiev today. The unannounced visit to Ukraine's capital comes as international resources are being stretched due to the Israel-Hamas war. The CBC's Richard Madden is joining us from Washington. Richard, what can you tell us about Lloyd Austin's visit today?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. Secretary Austin made that unannounced visit in a symbolic gesture of what he called unwavering support for Ukraine. It was a high-profile push to keep cash and weapons flowing to the region amid the growing pressure as international focus and resources are stretched by Israel's war against Hamas. The secretary flew into Poland over the weekend and took that 9-hour train ride into Kyiv. Here's what he said upon his arrival.
This is still a very dangerous environment, no question about it. And I hope that based upon your work, based upon the work of the other 50 countries that are working with us, that we can move the needle forward and help Ukraine do what it wants to do, and that is regain its sovereign territory.
Now, Secretary Austin is scheduled to meet with top officials and address Ukraine's urgent military needs as the war enters yet another cold winter of fighting.
Now, despite Austin's visit to show the United States' ongoing support for Ukraine, there is division in Washington when it comes to funding Ukraine's defense. Richard, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, domestic politics further complicating Secretary Austin's visit. The Pentagon's budget for Ukraine is running low this year, and a divided Congress is stalling on more cash for Ukraine. As you'll recall, there was no aid package in the latest spending bill, so officials have been urging Congress to provide additional money. But a growing number of Republicans are opposed to more funding to Ukraine unless Congress puts funding to America's southern border, and it's unclear if or when lawmakers will carve out a separate spending bill to address that.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington, thank you.
Thank you.
The federal government's fall economic statement will be tabled tomorrow, and CBC News has learned some of what will be included. There will be billions of dollars in loans to build new rental housing, $1 billion in a fund dedicated to more affordable housing, a new Canadian mortgage charter to ensure mortgage lenders treat homeowners fairly, and restrictions on owners of short-term rental properties. Karina Roman has more from Ottawa.
We won't be able to do everything.
Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says the fiscal update to be tabled tomorrow will be restrained.
It's a hard balance to strike, making the necessary investments and at the same time being fiscally responsible.
A senior government source who isn't authorized to speak publicly says the economic statement will include $15 billion in 10-year loans for new rental housing construction, a $1 billion fund dedicated to getting affordable housing built, and a new enforceable charter of rules that mortgage lenders must abide by when dealing with homeowners at financial risk. The update will also include proposed changes to the Competition Act. And Radio-Canada confirms what the Toronto Star first reported, that Ottawa intends to crack down on owners of short-term rental properties when they are located in areas where such rentals are restricted or prohibited, for example, in Quebec. The fiscal situation is tight. Growth will be slower than what was projected last spring, and current high interest rates will constrain government borrowing.
We have been warning about this day.
Goldie Hyder heads up the Business Council of Canada.
There's no sense of how we're ever going to get back to a balanced budget, how it is that we're going to be able to control our interest costs, our borrowing costs.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also wants the government to balance the books. But the NDP, whose support the Liberals rely on, is calling for more action on housing and affordability. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
Argentina has a new president. Far-right libertarian Javier Milei defeated Economy Minister Sergio Massa. Milei won support on promises of a dramatic shakeup in government and overhauling the central bank.
El modelo de la decadencia ha llegado a su fin. No hay vuelta atrás.
He says the model of decadence has come to an end. Milei, who has little political experience, has been likened to former U.S. President Donald Trump. In fact, Trump called Milei to personally congratulate him. A coroner's inquest examining the death of a mentally ill man who died in an Ontario jail will begin later today. Solomon Fakiri died inside his cell at the Central East Correctional Centre in December 2016. In the moments before his death, Fakiri was shackled, pepper sprayed, and face down with his head covered. Provincial police did not lay any charges against the guards involved. The inquest will be held virtually over 15 days and will hear from about 20 witnesses. Some Inuit artists say international conservation rules are hurting their livelihoods. Their concerns are in the spotlight after an American doctor was convicted in the U.S. for leaving Canada with sculptures made of whale teeth and walrus tusk. Matthew Lapierre has more.
In his studio in Belleville, Ontario, Ruben Anton Kamangapik carves whalebone into ornate sculptures. He says it's an important part of his culture.
I really love working with whalebone. Like I said, it makes me feel like I'm visiting my grandfather.
Even though the whalebone is decades old, the species it comes from is protected by an international treaty called CITES. That makes it hard, even impossible, to sell the kind of art Kamangapik loves to make to other countries, including the U.S. An American doctor pleaded guilty last month to illegally crossing the U.S. border with a trunkful of Inuit art. He had statues carved from sperm whale teeth and a walrus tusk, which he purchased at Montreal art gallery Image Boreale. Canadian authorities have now charged the gallery with illegally selling sperm whale teeth and producing false documents, but they have yet to enter a plea. Their lawyer refused to comment. Some conservationists say export restrictions are important to protect species at risk. Barry Kent McKay is the director of the Animal Alliance of Canada.
The only way to assure that the artisans will have something that they can carve is to protect the walrus and prevent it from becoming extinct.
Inuit artists such as Kamangapik say loosening the restrictions won't lead to an increase in animal deaths.
We hunt animals in a very respectful way. We hunt for what we need.
Kamangapik says he's going to continue carving bone, even if it's not easy to sell. Matthew Lapierre, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. Thanks for joining us this Monday morning. Well, chin up, Bomber fans. Someone had to win the Grey Cup. We'll talk more about what happened in Hamilton yesterday, so stay tuned. Bomber News, of course, couldn't quite win, but nonetheless, quite a story for the Montreal Alouettes, who came out of nowhere in the back half of the season. This hour on the program, they're a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. A resident from Sconan, Manitoba receives the doll of their dreams, an Indigenous Barbie called Wilma Mankiller. It was sent to them and is signed by the doll's designer. We're going to hear the story. That's coming up in moments, actually. Also, this hour on the program, we're going to hear more about a helpline that has been set up specifically for Muslim youth to deal with their mental health as anxieties and conflict and war continues in the Middle East. So stay tuned. So those conversations still ahead. We also this hour on the show, speaking of young people, are going to be talking about the idea of a national universal food program that could be administered in schools across this country. So how far are we away from that? It was one of the promises the NDP government made on the campaign trail, you might recall, to fund such a program. So we'll have that interview coming up as well. Right now, let's get to Lauren Donnelly, who's in our news center right now with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. What to do about all the broken bus shelters. The City of Winnipeg plans to test out shatterproof glass. The pilot project comes as the city struggles to keep up with repairs. And Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Procter & Gamble, a Winnipeg nurse suing several top drug companies, is seeking class action approval, alleging the companies profited for decades through sales of oral decongestant medications with a drug found to be ineffective. We'll have more details on both of those stories coming up in your next local CBC News at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Pat, you want to talk about the heartbreak that was the Bombers? You want to talk about the weather?
I can't. Wow. Yeah, that was tough, eh? That was a real tough one.
Well, Yeah, it was, but I mean, I said it off air. I'll say it on air. It's sports. Don't underestimate the power of a streak, of an underdog, and of being hungry for it. So, congrats to the Montreal Alouettes on a great cup, great game.
And Cody Fajardo
in many
played
ways
very well, right?
I mean, questionable calls along the way here or there.
I did think that was a fumble late in the third there when Montreal caught the ball. He caught it, turned.
Did you?
Made an athletic play because he turned, and then dropped the ball. That should have been a fumble.
Yeah, I don't know. It was
in my books.
So what's the storyline on the Bombers this morning? I guess is what everyone's going to be asking here in Manitoba.
And what does this team look like going forward? Some people came back. Some of the players came back because of this team. They're so tight, right? Everything you hear about this team is how much they love each other, and that's the disappointment, right? I was just reading a Bombers website story from Ed Tate talking about. That's the biggest disappointment yesterday is just how tight this team is, and they didn't win it for each other.
Much analysis coming up. Right now, we're just sitting in the disappointment and trying to be good Canadian sports and being happy for Montreal.
We will go live to Hamilton at 8:10 and talk with CBC's Brittany Greenslade, who was there covering the game.
Weather-wise, okay, so we take a bit of a turn this week. Little change from last week. Going to rain today?
Kind of a big change, I'd say. So I'm looking at some of these temperatures later on in the week. So today is a daytime high of 9. Wow, for Monday, November 20th, that is warm because the average daytime temperature for this time of year is about a -4. Overnight low is usually about a -12. So we are certainly above that for the past week or so. And then we take the turn to more seasonal conditions. We do have a 60% chance of showers late this afternoon. I'm thinking, how can I get my rain gutters to go into the rink I plan to flood next week? So I got to try and figure that out in my mind by 4 o'clock or later afternoon when it starts to rain. So it's going to be a gusty day as well. Winds southwest 30 to 50, and then that chance of showers later in the day for Winnipeg and parts of southern Manitoba, and then maybe a few showers late this evening, and then partly cloudy. And we'll still be a little bit windy overnight, though, gust to 40 overnight, and still from the northwest. Tomorrow, sunshine and 1, and then 0 on Wednesday, and then that's it, folks. We have minus single digits for the foreseeable future. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, -8, -7, -6, and way off in the distance next Sunday, -10. These are daytime highs. Overnight, -14-ish, -16-ish. So almost plug in the vehicle weather in my books, but once we get into that -20, that's when we start to really feel that cold overnight. And we don't have any of those in the forecast here for Winnipeg. So it is 5 degrees in the downtown right now, and we're mostly clear. Brandon is -2 and clear on the way to a high of 6. And Thompson, you are -3, and you will see a +1 today. And we do have a winter storm watch going on for the Churchill York regions. Could see some snow materialize. I'll tell you more about that at 6:35. And we could see some freezing rain in Shamattawa and some of those areas. Again, I'll have more on that in the regional forecast at 6:35. Give a quick traffic number here at 6:15 in the morning, 788-3093. If there's anything out there hampering your commute, it is early and traffic volumes are low, but do give me a call at that number, 788-3093.
Well, up first this half hour on the program, how often do you see dolls that looked like you or even were the same culture as you? For one doll collector, they received the ultimate Barbie to add to their extensive collection. Willa Sakachaway is a local Sconan resident in Manitoba here who just added the Wilma Mankiller Barbie to the shelf. Wilma Mankiller was an American Indigenous activist and social worker. And Willissa is with us by Zoom this morning to talk about the doll and talk about how they got it. Hi there.
Hi there. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us this morning so early, especially on Zoom. I appreciate seeing your dolls.
No problem. So you can see behind me.
Yeah.
You can pull them all out.
I love it. Can you pull out the one that you just got?
Okay. I got the Wilma Mankiller doll here from the Inspiring Woman series from Mattel, Barbie. So
Tell me about her.
my joy in getting this doll because we haven't had a Native American doll from Barbie since I believe 2006. So I was really excited about this. And how this happened was I posted it on Facebook to let people know that this doll was coming out, was being released. So couple of days later, the designer himself who designed this doll at Mattel, Carlisle Noera, messaged me and said, I'm sending you a doll. So he sent me a doll. A week later, I got it and he signed it. I have the signature right on the doll, on the box. Amazing.
That is amazing. So did the designer, sorry, I was interjecting there. I'm excited. Did the designer, how did they know? Did they see your Facebook post that you were a collector and this particular doll meant a lot to you?
Yes, he saw my post on Facebook. I have a couple of the designers on my Facebook, luckily, so I get to see what they're doing. So he saw my post about my excitement on getting this doll, because I have all the Native American and dolls that Mattel has ever made except for one. So I've been collecting since 1993. So I have them going way back since the first one.
Let's describe some of these for the radio audience is benefit here this morning. So behind you, you have a group of about, how many dolls are there? About 20, 15?
Say there's about 15.
Yeah.
About there, 15, 16, about there.
And those are all of you said those are all the Native American dolls you've been collecting?
Yes, since 1993, Mattel has come out with, down south they call them Native American dolls or American Indian dolls if you want to do some shopping.
Can you show me the first one, Melissa? Can you pull the first one you ever collected out there and we can describe it? Get you to come on back. Let's have a look at this one.
This is the original 1993 doll.
Oh, look at the condition. So with all the beautiful fringes, and it looks like, is there beading on her top? Little shoes?
It looks like it's a little bit, yeah.
Oh, I love that. And are there earrings there too?
It's available online. You can find her around on eBay floating around.
She's beautiful. Yeah, they're all in very different states. It's sort of, they're all very cultural and very, very traditional Native American dress, right?
Yes, I got them. They're from all different regions all over North America. So.
Very cool. Which one do you love the best?
It's hard.
They're all your kids.
There's a hard to find one that my cousin found for me at a yard sale.
Okay, let's pull that one out and hold it up to the camera. Oh wow, she's
called Wind Dancer Barbie, and she's a hard to find doll at the moment. So this is I value her. So she stays in box. And Wilma Mankiller will stay in the box as well.
Yeah. So the one that's hard to find, just so the radio listeners can understand how elaborate it is. I mean, there's feathers all over. It almost looked like there's a jacket or a cloak with feathers on her. She's gorgeous. Why is she hard to find? Was she sold out or was she?
She's a limited series. She's part of a collector's edition. So she's it's called Gold Label under the Barbie lines. Yeah. So she's very hard to find now, and she's very expensive. You do find her. So
now I got into your collection really quickly, but we better talk about the Barbie at hand rather. So Wilma Mankiller who was Wilma Mankiller?
She was the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. She was the first woman who won actually in any nation in any tribe in the U.S. apparently. So in recent era, I guess. So.
Why was it beyond the collection? Why was it important to you to have this doll?
Well, because I'm Indigenous myself, of course, and Indigenous dolls. I want to have everyone by Mattel as a collector. It is very important for me. I'm only missing one doll, and I'm still trying to get her. So
who is she?
She's called. It's a Bob Mackie designer dress. It's called Goddess of the Americas. So. Of course, I still have to get that one. It's still a bit money, but one day I will.
Did you always love Barbies? And obviously, we've had lots of conversations with many Barbie collectors, and seeing a doll that represents or looks like you, is obviously super meaningful and important. Did you always love Barbies and kind of wait for a Barbie to come out that would be sort of part of, relate to your identity?
Yeah, well, as a child, I was always playing Barbies with my cousins, so.
Me too.
I was preferred to play with their toys rather than the toys that I was given at Christmas. So yeah, I've always been interested in makeup, fashion, and all that. So as I got older, I started collecting in my when was that? 92, I think.
Yeah. What did it mean to you then when the first Native American Barbie came out, as she was known?
It was awesome. I remember it too, back in the 90s, because we didn't have any representation back then, in Barbie doll form. So they did this collection called Dolls of the World. That's where the first Barbie came out, so she was part of that series, and I was excited. I got her right away.
For other doll collectors who might be listening, where's the best place to get a doll from if you are trying to?
Well, now that most of the big retail stores, like I used to buy them back a while ago at these big retailers, like the Bay and stores. Now it's easy; it's online. I buy it on either eBay. You can find some of the old stuff, and of course Amazon.
Yeah.
You can go to Toys R Us online. So some of the stores.
Before you go this morning, why don't we just do a final description of your new doll? If you could hold her up again to the camera, and we'll have a little look at her here. Wilma Mankiller.
So yeah, she's dressed in she's dressed in a turquoise Cherokee tear dress. She has the medicine color ribbons on her, and she has short brown hair and a beautiful face. She's carrying a basket. So this outfit is taken inspiration from one of her campaign dresses when Wilma Mankiller ran for office.
Amazing.
So I believe she wore this too on her maiden speech. So
lovely. Well, good luck not taking it out of the box. That would be hard.
Oh, she's not coming out of the box. She's staying in this forever.
All the best to you.
I'll take her to the grave with me.
Wilissa, thank you very much for being with us and telling us this story about how they connected and the designer signed the doll for you. Signed the box. Amazing. Appreciate hearing.
It's a dream come true as a collector. Wow.
I bet it is. Take care. Thanks for being with us on CBC today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
That's Wilissa Ketchaway. She's a doll collector from Sconan, Manitoba, which is about, in case you're wondering, 336 km northwest of Winnipeg. It's in the at the base, rather, of Waterhen Lake.
She's daring, she's critical, and ultimately hopeful. Writer and filmmaker Astra Taylor explores our shared sense of insecurity and anxiety and proposes a new path forward. Hi, I'm Nala Ayed. Join me all week as Ideas presents the 2023 CBC Massey Lectures, The Age of Insecurity, coming together as things fall apart.
Ideas, weeknights at 8, 8:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
It is 6:24 a.m. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. And if you're on YouTube this morning, you can also watch us. So super fun. Subscribe if you're not yet on our CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. It is in Winnipeg, 5 degrees, going to rain this afternoon. And next on the show, during our recent provincial election, the NDP promised to fund a universal school nutrition program. My next guest says an increasing number of children go to school hungry. Families are experiencing greater food insecurity with inflation and the cost of groceries. Angela D'Andrea is head of philanthropy at the Charity Breakfast Club of Canada. The organization is focused on children and ensuring that they have regular access to nutritious food. So on this World Children's Day, as declared by the United Nations, to promote the well-being of kids, we thought we'd look at what's going on with the idea of a national food school program. And she's with us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
So where are we at across the country? I know you've been lobbying for more funding for a national program. What's going on right now?
We have. So in 2019, the federal budget stated the intention to create a national school food program. And in 2021, the Liberals made it an election promise. But here we are coming to the end of 2023. There's no concrete funding in place. So as you mentioned off the top, we're continuing to lobby to make this a reality.
So when we hear our province, like the intention of our new provincial government during the campaign, they said that they want to fund a universal or national program. What's the state of it across the country when you look province to province?
Right. So, right across the country, Breakfast Club of Canada is active in all provinces and territories. And what that looks like by the numbers, so we have over 3,000 school nutrition programs across the country. And these programs are helping to serve or helping to reach over 420,000 children each day, each school day. So when we're looking at, really from a systemic issue, what can be done? It takes efforts from all sectors to help children access nutritious food at school and at home. And while the club's efforts are targeted towards helping children access nutritious food at school, there really is more that can be done to help address this issue systemically. And we feel that a national school food program would be one of these systemic solutions that would be a game changer. You know, it's by working together that we can help all children access nutritious food at school, which really is the vision of Breakfast Club of Canada.
Just to reiterate, I know that we did some of these, we looked at some of these stats recently because the food bank report came out, which also we're seeing record numbers of people needing food banks. But what does the wait list look like for schools that want a meal program right now?
Sure. So we have hundreds of schools on the wait list. And, as it turns out, with the funding that we've got right now, we can't reach all of the programs that we need to. So our focus for this year is continuing to maintain the programs that we have in place. We have no plans of being able to open new programs. And again, that's just based on the funding that we don't have. So a national school food program would help address this. And, when we're looking at that, we're looking at a cost-shared model because there are millions of children in Canada that would benefit from a school food program.
What specifically would you say to Manitobans listening this morning about the needs in our province for this and what to think about in your view?
Well, in Manitoba specifically, we've got over 16,000 children who are reached every day through Breakfast Club programs. That's 85 school nutrition programs across the province, including 52 programs in Indigenous populations. The need is great, and the benefits of physical health to children, breakfast programs help alleviate hunger-related stress. They increase a child's ability to focus and learn. It increases their energy level at school. It really actually helps increase their attendance and punctuality. And on top of that, it's important to remember that the positive impacts of breakfast programs really do spill out beyond the meal itself. Breakfast programs foster a sense of engagement and belonging and promote greater nutritional awareness, greater access to nutritious and varied food choices. On top of that, it's also beneficial to children's mental health because of that caring and inclusive school community that are built around breakfast programs.
Thank you for your time this morning and highlighting the ongoing issue here, as we mentioned, on World Children's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next on the program, we have news coming up. We've been talking to Angel Dandria, National Director of Philanthropy with the Breakfast Club of Canada. So Lauren Donnelly in a moment on the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Good morning, everyone. You're on Information Radio here on CBC 89.3. We've got a bit of a different day in our hands. It's going to be a little cooler than what we have had. Yesterday was so mild once again. Business news is coming up. If you're a regular listener, you know Crystal Lee Ramlakan is going to join us. As we get into the holidays, there's some new data about how many Canadians are still paying off debt from holiday gifts they bought last year. So stay tuned. That's right after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's 3 degrees and mostly cloudy. Mainly sunny today with a chance of showers late this afternoon, windy and a high of 9. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers were left stunned last night after the Montreal Alouettes completed a comeback to win the Grey Cup. Winnipeg defeated Montreal twice this season and was seeking its third CFL title in 4 years. The Bombers also lost last season to the Toronto Argonauts. The loss spoiled a stellar performance by running back Brady Oliveira. He rushed 119 yards. And one of the hard truths of pro sports began to set in right after the Blue Bombers' loss. Brady Oliveira says it will be hard not seeing the same group together next year. He says the chemistry the team had this year was more special than in years past.
I got so emotional because it's not going to be the same group next year. That's just the reality of the CFL. So that sucks, man.
Winnipeg fell 28-24 against Montreal last night. The city of Winnipeg plans to test out shatterproof glass in bus shelters. It's part of an effort to curb vandalism as the city struggles to keep up with repairs. Janice Lukes is chair of the Public Works Committee.
It's an incredible, durable material, but it's 2 to 3 times the cost. So we're going to have to be really strategic on where these, if we proceed with that.
Nearly 300 bus shelters have had broken glass this year, about a third of all bus shelters in the city. Currently, 115 are still missing glass. Luke says at least one bus shelter will get the impact-resistant glass in the coming months. The location of that bus shelter won't be released publicly to prevent anyone trying to deliberately damage it. An assault charge has been stayed against an RCMP officer who kneeled on a man's neck during an arrest. Constable Eric Garian was charged in 2022 after a video of the 2019 arrest at the Winnipeg airport came to light. That charge was stayed earlier this month after the Crown said there was no longer a reasonable likelihood of conviction. Ian Scott is the former head of Ontario's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit. Scott says the video alone should be enough for the case to go to trial.
I believe the video cries out for an explanation, and regrettably, the public will be denied that explanation.
Scott says he thinks the charge being stayed sends a troubling message. You can read more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. While overseas, there are reports of heavy fighting near yet another hospital in the Gaza Strip. This is the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. It appears there are dozens of fatalities following overnight Israeli airstrikes. And a medical worker has told the Associated Press that as many as 700 people have taken shelter in the facility. Hundreds of people rallied downtown yesterday in Winnipeg, calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Zahia was among the many people at the rally, and she lived in Gaza as a child. She says many people there are scared and don't know what's going to happen.
You can't sleep well. You can't having your regular day like anyone, because you feel like, I don't know, you feel bad.
She says participating in the rallies is the least she can do to show her support. The Prime Minister has held off calling for a ceasefire despite the demands of some. The government is instead backing a sustained pause in the fighting to get aid in and hostages out. A Winnipeg nurse suing several top drug companies is seeking class action approval, alleging the companies profited for decades through sales of oral decongestant medications with a drug found to be ineffective. Barb Aori, a nurse of 33 years, claims she was misled into purchasing products containing phenylephrine. Last September, the FDA concluded the drug is not effective as a decongestant in pill form. The 24 drugs named in the suit are sold under brands such as Tylenol, Dayquil, Neocitran, and Vicks. The companies that have been involved in their manufacturing include Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Procter & Gamble. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Statements of defense have not been filed. And finally, the Bombers may have lost, but one good thing about last night, memories were made. John Geary wasn't sure how much time he'd have left with his mother, Doreen, when he arrived here from PEI over a month ago, but he says the 94-year-old has made a comeback in health. And last night, Geary, his mother, and some other family members watched the Grey Cup together from her hospital room. He says they had a great night despite the loss.
Moments are precious at this time, and at 94, you never know when the last time is, and the three kids relished that.
Geary also says his mother's 40-year allegiance to the Bombers isn't going to be broken after one game. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
Oh, it's a nice story, hey?
It is a nice story.
Wow. Yeah.
Captures the Winnipeg spirit, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Lauren Donnelly in for Heather Wells this morning. Pat Kanuga is here to look at our forecast, our regional forecast from CBC Manitoba.
Well, from winning spirit to winter spirit, we're going to start up in the north where there's a winter storm watch in effect for Churchill and York. Blowing snow or blizzard conditions expected today through Thursday because of a low pressure system over Hudson Bay. That's going to give some strong winds and some snow throughout the next few days. So know about that, Churchill and York regions. We also have a freezing rain warning this morning. Gillam, Shamattawa, Island Lake, God's Lake, Oxford House, Red Sucker Lake. Freezing rain is expected or occurring. It's a band of freezing rain that's going to impact part of northern Manitoba this morning. So know that is happening. Let's tell you what this temperature is in Churchill since we're up that region right now. Talking about it, -6 right now on the way to a -2 with some light snow. And Thompson, you're -3. You're going to see a high of 1 today. Mix of sun and cloud this morning, more clouds this afternoon, and then some periods of snow and wind gusting to 50 this afternoon. And Thompson, you take a turn as well. So that 1 today, a -8 tomorrow. Later in the week by Thursday, a -17 for a daytime high, -21 overnight. So that's where your temperatures are headed later on in the week. Over in Brandon, -2 right now, clear skies. I'm looking at satellite and radar imagery. Lots of clear skies over Brandon, and a good part of the province is clear this morning. Some clouds that were over Winnipeg are moving southeast. So southeastern Manitoba is cloudy right now, but it's going to be a bright day as these clouds move off. This is a little bit of cloud cover is moving southeast. So that's what's happening from that point of view, looking at the skies. And Brandon has mentioned a 6 today, mix of sun and cloud tonight, an overnight low of -9, and tomorrow sunny and a 0. And then Brandon gets colder as well. We are going to see a daytime high of -9 by Thursday. And Winnipeg, we're 5 right now. Pretty mild morning out there. Watch out for ice on the streets, or on the sidewalks, I should say. Our parking lot was pretty icy this morning getting out of the car. But we are at 5 right now. We are going to get to a daytime high today of 9, and we're going to see sunshine. But then by late afternoon, we have a 60% chance of showers, a blustery day as well. Southwest winds to 50. Tonight, we'll dip down to a -2. Could see some showers overnight. Tomorrow, just a measly 1. That's as warm as we get with sunshine. And then Wednesday, Thursday, 0 for Wednesday, -8 on Thursday, Friday, a -7. So we are taking a turn as well.
We didn't nod at all to the Santa parade and the Jets game.
I was just
Everyone was worried about parking, but everything was fine.
I was going to say traffic's still tied up from Saturday at 5 o'clock.
It was
I'm
fine.
kidding. I know, it was great. Lots of people downtown. Heard from some friends who went, and they said, yeah, as long as you knew where to park and had a plan, you were fine.
Well, and because the weather cooperated, because
Yeah.
if you had to park further away and then you're walking, it's no problem. So nice to see that event go off. And, Santa deserves a bit of a warm day in Winnipeg. He does all that work here where it's cold. So it's nice that he got a nice day.
Quick funny story. Driving down Highway 8 at 11 o'clock Saturday morning, going to Scotty's hockey, so right by the St. Andrews Airport, and there's a big kind of traffic jam. It's really slow, and there's a semi ahead of us, and we're like, what's on that semi? Then we see 2 trees, and then it makes a turn. We're like, oh my goodness, it's Santa's sleigh. So it was okay to get hung up for Santa's sleigh. It was really nice to see that.
Cute.
Just a couple of quick mentions here. We're going to see 12s in a couple locations. Morton Winkler, Pembina Valley, 12s, and 11s in southeast corner. So very warm temperatures in some parts of the province today. I'll make a quick mention of the traffic line, 788-3093. I mentioned ice a little while ago. Yes, sidewalks and parking lots still could be a little bit slippery. So do watch out for that. I am standing by for your calls, though. If you have anything, let us know about it.
All right. Thank you, Pat. It is now 21 minutes to 7 o'clock, and Crystalie Ramlakan is here with our business report on Zoom. How you doing? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Good morning, Marcy.
So we're smiling, but we're going to stop right away because I find this first story instructive, but kind of, really a sign of the times where people are at financially. So we're getting into the holidays, and I understand you have data this year that says that many Canadians are still paying off debt from holiday gifts they bought last year.
Yes. So a new survey found about half of Canadians purchased gifts on credit last year, and 1 in 4 are still paying them off. They still haven't paid them off yet. So a year later. So that's according to new data from NerdWallet, which is a financial advice website. And it also found that 1/3 are going to spend less per person this year. 1/3 said they will only buy items on sale this year. And 15% of people planning on buying gifts plan to pick up a side hustle to pay for them. So for more on this, here's Shannon Terrell, who is the spokesperson for NerdWallet Canada.
We have holiday traditions that we want to uphold. But again, we can still have a beautiful celebration if we're willing to tweak things just a little bit to better fit our budget. And also being aware that most people this year are in the same boat. We have all been facing these same challenges financially, these interest rate hikes, the inflation. So sometimes all it takes is just speaking up and recognizing that other people would probably benefit from maybe a change in plans or tweaking things a little bit too.
Yeah. So, and Marcy, just to let you know, this online survey was of more than 1,000 Canadian adults, and it was conducted at the beginning of October. And the data has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.6 percentage points, 19 times out of 20.
Let's move to tech news. OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, has removed, I understand, its CEO and co-founder. What else do we know about this?
Yes. So, in the last year, Sam Altman has catapulted ChatGPT to global fame, and he has become Silicon Valley's sought-after voice on the promise and potential dangers of AI. So Altman even helped start OpenAI as a nonprofit research laboratory back in 2015. But on Friday, the company said after a review, Altman was not consistently candid in his communications with the board of directors. And the artificial intelligence company said the board had lost confidence in him. Now, late last night, OpenAI said it was bringing on the former CEO of Twitch to run the company. And then after that, Microsoft announced that Altman is being absorbed in-house into the Microsoft team. So that's to lead a new advanced AI research team. Now, Microsoft has invested billions of dollars into OpenAI and has a close technology partnership with the company. And Altman has also, placed large bets on several other ambitious projects. So even if he wasn't absorbed, he probably would have had some other stuff to work on, including a technology to produce energy from hydrogen in seawater and biotechnology, which aims to add years to the human lifespan. And he also co-founded WorldCoin. So that's a cryptocurrency project that's been scanning people's eyeballs with the goal of creating a vast digital identity and financial network.
You did just say scanning people's eyeballs, right?
I did. Yes. There are these, kiosks where you go and you stand in front of it and they scan your eyeballs. And yeah, it's part of that project.
Well, let's stay with AI. Your final story is about technology to help people if they're messy. It helps with the messy backgrounds on video calls. Although I think you and I look pretty good this morning. I have a nice skyline of Winnipeg behind me, and you've got a nice CBC banner. But what is this? What does this tech do?
Yes, so we probably don't need it, but other people who are messy might need it. So Microsoft has announced a new Decorate Your Room tool for Microsoft Teams that's going to launch next year. So the new feature will use artificial intelligence to allow users to decorate and enhance their surroundings, including cleaning up clutter or adding plants to a wall. So people will even be able to make their rooms more festive by superimposing fairy lights or adding holiday decorations. And Marcy, this tool is just one of many features that they're coming out with, including voice isolation and improved speaker recognition.
Good. I want wallpaper. Yes. My husband doesn't want real wallpaper in the house, so maybe I can do it through AI on my home call.
Yeah, exactly.
What's up in the markets this morning?
So in Europe, stocks are mixed. Germany is down, the UK is down, France is up. In Asia, markets are mostly higher as China leaves its benchmark lending rates unchanged. So Japan is down, though. Right now, Shanghai and Hong Kong are both up. Oil is up $1.12 to $77.01 US per barrel. Gold is down $7.70 to $1,977 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.02 of a cent to 72.89 cents US.
All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Marcy.
See you later. That's Crystal Lee Ramlichan with Business News. 6:44 a.m. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcuso. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM or on the app. We're partly cloudy, 5 degrees. We'll go to 9 today. Lots of sunshine. And then this afternoon happens. Cloud cover, chance of showers, really windy, and then low -2. And tomorrow we're just around 0 for the daytime high. Well, next, a bit of music on the show. We were just talking about messy backgrounds. This tune's actually called Messing Things Up Again. It comes from Winnipeg-born artist Ethan Lyric.
Butter less and talking about women. Polo shirts and men who think I'm their girl.
Up again.
Frequencies with Errol Nazareth.
The world is alive with sound, whether across the street or across the pond, from back home or in your own backyard. Every place has a sound and every person has a story. Discover songs and stories from people and communities across Canada and around the world.
Frequencies with host Errol Nazareth. Episodes available on demand on the CBC Listen app.
12 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3. And coming up on the program after 7 o'clock, Winnipeg City Councillors are going to vote this week on big changes to our zoning bylaws. It would make it easier, these changes, to build multifamily homes in more parts of the city. So we're going to hear from Councillor Brian Mays. He's been opposing the changes. He was the lone voice opposing them last week on council. So we're going to, on Executive Policy Committee rather. So we're going to hear more from him about why. So that is coming up. And we'll dig into this a little bit, especially in case you missed our interview with the mayor about this on Thursday. So we'll also hear a bit more of what Scott Gillingham had to say to CBC last week. We're still taking listener lines on this, by the way. What are your thoughts on infill housing? You've probably seen some of these in your neighborhoods. We've got them in River Heights. We've got them in St. Boniface, St. Vital, which is why Councillor Mays is of high interest. But often they take down, the lots are smaller. Maybe they've had one house on them. And then once they come down, they build sort of a large, often fourplex that'll be very tall and use sort of most of the lot. And it's infill housing. It's happening all across Canada, around the world, in fact. Is it the right way forward for Winnipeg? What concerns you about it, and what do you welcome about it and in our growing city? 788-3205. Still time to weigh in this week, anytime. 788-3205. As mentioned, though, the actual vote on this is coming up in council on Thursday. In addition, I had on the show, if you entered our contest last week about something that is also coming up in Winnipeg, we're going to tell you who won. This is for CBC Radio's Laugh Out Loud live show later this week. CBC host Ali Hassan is going to be on. Kids were calling the listener line if you were one of them with your jokes. You really want to lean into the radio because Ali's going to pick a winner this morning. So that's coming up at 7:40. We will pick a winner for those tickets. Well, next on the show, turning to serious matters, many communities across this country have been watching the conflict in the Middle East closely and have been affected by the suffering and death that we're seeing every day. In our news feeds, on television, in newspapers, people are experiencing the impacts. Nasiha is a mental health organization. It's a helpline that serves Muslim youth. It's reporting an increase of 600% in calls to the helpline since the most recent conflict began. Joining us to talk about the effect on the community is Mohsen Kermali. He's the director of Nasiha. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
600%. I mean, that's an astonishing number, and yet maybe not surprising. How would you describe the nature of the calls you've been getting from young people?
Yeah, so the calls really are around, when it comes down to the anxiety, and the 600% really related to the impact on what's going on in Gaza and how it's had a negative effect on people's mental health, specifically Canadian Muslims. Recognizing that the anxiety and the depression that, people are facing are really valid and significant. It's not just about the numbers, but these are real people who are facing, significant distress, whether it's being silenced, harassed, or in some cases even fired.
So it's interesting because the stress is, we started by talking about the stress of watching what's happening. But this, as you're outlining, is about people having stress around and maybe fear around what's happening in their own lives as a result.
Yeah, really. When you look at, some of the common stories, they point to DEI concerns, so diversity, equity, inclusion concerns. We see that from the calls, there's a clear disparity in the acknowledgement and support of different communities affected by the conflict. They point right to institutional failures in schools and workplaces, where there's an inability to recognize and support all communities equally, especially those for us of Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian backgrounds, which unfortunately then exacerbates one's mental health.
How is social media playing into this? What's the impact that's having?
So social media is something that, everyone, a lot of people use. And, when you see these graphic images, that sometimes can lead to, quite often it leads to vicarious trauma, where people are reliving and living this conflict in real time 24/7. You combine that with issues that people are having at the workplace or at school, it can really take a toll on one's anxiety and really can lead to depression for certain individuals.
Can you give us an example of something that would happen in someone's workplace or school? If listeners are thinking around, how to show support for someone in their community at this tense time, it may be instructive to hear sort of an example of what you're hearing on the phone line.
Yeah, absolutely. So a story that comes to mind is a lady called in to seek help. She identified as someone who wears a headscarf, so the hijab, and she felt suffocated, that her boss was reconsidering her promotion simply because of a tweet that was deemed too political. And she simply tweeted, "This is horrific. We need a ceasefire now." And that was enough to derail her career and deny her promotion that she's been waiting on for years. So that's an example. We've had examples from workplaces where, multiple emails back to back are being sent to employees, asking staff to check on an identity of certain colleagues, but then not acknowledging the pain and suffering of Palestinian, Arab, and Muslims, for example, and Christians in the workplace 40 days into the conflict. So these stories are examples and how it can really impact someone's life, and someone can feel very isolated, which exacerbates anxiety and can lead to depression as well, which is really not good, and that's what people are calling for help on.
Nasia is unique, obviously, the service, as we mentioned, but in case, because I'll offer the number after if people are listening in and want to reach out. But can you outline what's unique about it if someone's considering calling or maybe telling a friend about it, that this might be helpful in their life?
Absolutely. So some of the main things that make us a little bit different is, number one, is we're trained to understand the nuances when it comes down to the religion and the cultural nuances. Number two, we offer add-on services such as therapy. And one of the big differentiating factors is that we offer our services in multiple languages, such as Arabic, French, Hindi, etc. So those are some main highlights on how we're different and unique.
How are you able to handle the sudden spike in the new volume of calls that you're receiving, that 600% increase?
Yeah, so we're lucky. We've been around for a while, and the way we've, created our staffing model is one where we have many part-time and volunteers. So super grateful for them to be able to step up and take on the additional hours when events like this take place, or when we see a sudden spike in calls, and we can really rely on our part-time staffers along with our volunteers.
How common are the themes that you're hearing? Like when you think about young people specifically, what themes are the most common is how I should phrase that.
Yeah, so really a lot of the themes are around being felt like people are being silenced, people are being ignored. Obviously, that's from a young person's perspective, and then in the workplace, some people are being even terminated. Overall, there are events that are on the rise now when it comes down to harassment. So it's fairly alarming for us, to hear these stories come through and people's impact that it's having on their mental health.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Really appreciate your time.
I appreciate it, Marcy. Thank you so much.
That's Mohsen Kermali, the director of the Muslim Youth Helpline, Nasia. He joined us from Ottawa. Now, the helpline number, and I'm going to say it twice here slowly, but it's 1-866-627-3342. So it is 1-866 Nasiha. So NASEAHA. So 1-866-627-3342. It's available from 12 to 3 by the time, but that's Eastern time. So note in Winnipeg, that is from 11 to 2, but it is 7 days a week. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM. And in for Heather Wells this morning, once again, Lauren Donnelly.
Good morning. As the fighting in Gaza continues, some Winnipeggers joined a national string of rallies to call for a ceasefire yesterday. We'll have more details on that. And the city's bomb unit responded to an unusual call yesterday after a suspicious item in a compost bin was reported. Your next local CBC News is after World Report.
Thanks very much, Lauren.
You're welcome.
In the forecast today, partly cloudy, 5 degrees. The high today is going to be 9. Sunny to start this afternoon, windy and wet a 60% chance of showers late in the day. And tonight, the few showers should end partly cloudy, still windy overnight. A little calmer by morning, gusting up to 40, and a low of -2 tonight. Tomorrow, sunshine, but the daytime high is just 1 degree. In Brandon right now, clear -2, Dauphin's clear 4 degrees, and Thompson's partly cloudy and -3. Traffic is cooperating so far, so good, so early, but call us if you need, 788-3093. Well, in the next hour of the show, we're going to be judging the jokes that came in our listener line from kids like this one.
This is Kenzie Bagnall leaving a joke for the Laugh Out Loud contest.
What do you call a cat that never tells the truth? A lion.
Nice. So who is going to win tickets to see CBC's Laugh Out Loud? Host Ali Hassan is going to join us this morning and judge the jokes. He'll be gentle, don't worry. They were all great, but we do have to pick a couple winners for tickets to the show at the Gas Station Arts Centre this week in Winnipeg. So we will do that in the next hour when Ali Hassan is going to join us. That's at 7:40. Also, joining us at 7:10 this morning, right after World Report. On Thursday, Winnipeg City Council votes on whether to loosen bylaws for zoning in our city. It would allow developers to build fourplexes with more ease. One councillor says it's not the solution to our housing woes, and he's going to join us. Brian Mays of St. Vital, he'll be here in studio after 7. And at 10 to 8 this morning, what does it mean for police to be accountable for their actions? We'll take a closer look at the police watchdog, the IIU, how it works and why some experts are calling for more transparency. And I should say continue to call for more transparency after years of that call being made. So that's tied to a recent development in the news, and we'll tell you all about it in the next hour. I'm Marcy Marcuso. World Report is next.
On the current.
The UN Environment Programme estimates that the world produces about 400 million metric tons of plastic waste every year.
Following an environmental conference in Kenya, activists and scientists are urging the world to take real action on a plastics treaty. The quest to cut out plastics and how Kenya is leading the way on the current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Ethel Musa. The federal government's fall economic statement will be tabled tomorrow, and CBC News has learned some of what will be included. Billions of dollars in loans to build new rental housing and $1 billion in a fund dedicated to more affordable housing. Karina Roman has more from Ottawa.
We won't be able to do everything. Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says the fiscal update to be tabled tomorrow will be restrained.
It's a hard balance to strike, making the necessary investments and at the same time being fiscally responsible.
A senior government source who isn't authorized to speak publicly says the economic statement will include $15 billion in 10-year loans for new rental housing construction, a $1 billion fund dedicated to getting affordable housing built, and a new enforceable charter of rules that mortgage lenders must abide by when dealing with homeowners at financial risk. The update will also include proposed changes to the Competition Act. And Radio-Canada confirms what the Toronto Star first reported, that Ottawa intends to crack down on owners of short-term rental properties when they are located in areas where such rentals are restricted or prohibited, for example, in Quebec. The fiscal situation is tight. Growth will be slower than what was projected last spring, and current high interest rates will constrain government borrowing.
We have been warning about this day.
Goldie Hyder heads up the Business Council of Canada.
There's no sense of how we're ever going to get back to a balanced budget, how it is that we're going to be able to control our interest costs, our borrowing costs.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also wants the government to balance the books, but the NDP, whose support the Liberals rely on, is calling for more action on housing and affordability. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
A group of Canadian MPs have arrived in Jerusalem this morning in a visit meant to show solidarity with Israel. 5 MPs, 2 Liberal and 3 Conservative, make up a larger delegation of about 60 people, including Canadian Jewish leaders. Liberal MP Anthony Housefather is part of the group. He wrote on social media the group has already met with survivors of the October 7th attack. The visit was planned before Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for comments he made last week. Trudeau called on the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint in its military operations. Meanwhile, in Gaza, there are reports of heavy fighting around yet another hospital. Airstrikes around the Indonesian hospital are being condemned by aid organizations. But Israel says it has no choice but to bring its fight to healthcare facilities. Abi Kukadasan has more.
12 people were killed in overnight Israeli airstrikes at Indonesian hospital in Gaza, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Medics say there are about 700 medical personnel and injured people inside the health facility. Thousands more are seeking shelter there. Rick Brennan is with the World Health Organization in Cairo.
We've documented over 150 attacks on hospitals and healthcare in Gaza, around 170 in the West Bank, and also 33 attacks by Hamas on healthcare in Israel. We condemn all those attacks.
The Israeli army says it has more proof Al-Shifa, Gaza's largest hospital, serves as a Hamas military command post. IDF spokesperson Elon Levy.
Just yesterday, we released a video of a tunnel shaft that extends 10 meters underneath the hospital complex.
The IDF says its second video shows 2 foreign hostages being taken inside Al-Shifa. It also says one of its soldiers, a 19-year-old, was killed on the grounds after being taken hostage. CBC News is not able to independently verify the footage.
We're demanding international accountability now from the global agencies that have said absolutely nothing about Hamas's abuse of hospitals as human shields.
But the WHO says it has condemned Hamas.
In principle, of course, WHO always condemns the use of medical facilities for military purposes.
The WHO says 31 surviving newborn babies were taken to Rafah by aid workers. Egyptian media now reports many have been moved to Egypt for care. Brennan says some of those newborns have lost both parents. Abi Kwadassan, CBC News, Berlin.
In Kiev, a surprise visit by a senior U.S. official is bringing attention back to the war in Ukraine. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin arrived by train this morning. He is scheduled to meet with senior Ukrainian officials, and he will publicly push for Ukraine to get the military support it needs as it enters another tough winter of fighting. Austin says the United States will continue to stand with Ukraine in its fight against Russia's aggression. In northern India, machines and laborers gather near a collapsed tunnel in Uttarakhand. 41 men have been trapped inside for more than a week. After numerous failed rescue attempts, officials say they will drill 2 parallel tunnels. The hope is that the men can use them as escape routes. But the situation is getting more dire by the day.
तो विटामिन बी, विटामिन सी, उस टाइप की चीज जो डॉक्टर्स ने एडवाइस
The Secretary for Road and Transport Services says vitamins and antidepressants are being sent through the pipeline, along with food and water. There's still no word on what caused the tunnel to collapse. Argentina has a new president. Far-right candidate Javier Milei was elected with more than half the popular vote. His opponent, Economic Minister Sergio Massa, conceded before the results were officially released last night. This election comes at a time when Argentines are dealing with an economy in crisis. Freelance reporter Marie Amel Lafourie has more.
Argentines have voted for radical change. Fed up with triple-digit inflation and rising poverty, they chose the outsider, who compares himself to Donald Trump, over the traditional left-of-center government candidate. Javier Milei is a far-right libertarian. On the campaign trail, he wielded a chainsaw to show how he plans to slash government spending. He also wants to replace the peso with the US dollar and abolish the central bank. His ideas won over many young people who saw little future in the country. In his victory speech, Milei called it a historic vote and said the rebuilding of Argentina would begin immediately. Jaime Baeza teaches politics at the Universidad de Chile. He believes the markets will react favorably to Milei's victory in the short term. Baeza says Milei's lack of experience and his minority in Congress will make it difficult to push through his reforms.
There's a lot of fears that Milei is not able to maintain himself in office for more than 6 months or a year. He would be in an absolutely mega minority in Congress in both chambers.
Milei will be sworn in next month. Marie-Armelle Laforie for CBC News, Santiago.
An inconsistency between the name on a passport and an airline ticket cost a PEI couple their dream trip. Porter Airlines pointed out the issue at the check-in counter. 3 missing letters meant a loss of thousands of dollars for the couple. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation.
Oh, wow. This is lovely.
Nancy and Doug Lee pore over pictures of Ireland online, the destination for a dream trip they were supposed to take last August with best friends. But at the airport, a Porter Airlines agent said Doug couldn't board. His ticket said Doug, but his passport said Douglas. By law, the names have to match.
They just said it's not the proper use of your name, so you can't go.
Turns out the tickets were booked on what's called a code share flight, an agreement between airlines to sell seats on each other's planes. Doug's group paid Air Transat for the tickets, but their seats were on a Porter flight. So it was up to Air Transat to fix the name. An agent on the phone finally corrected it in the system, but Porter couldn't catch Heads Up, the air passenger rights advocacy group.
When two airlines enter into a code share agreement, they have to ensure that their systems can talk to each other. Just claiming that our systems are not talking to each other is not an excuse.
Air Transat said it's updating procedures so names can be corrected on code share flights. It also told Go Public it will reimburse the couple for their airline tickets, but they're still out about $8,000 for the tour. Left to look at photos online they say they should have taken themselves.
It's really pretty.
And we missed it.
Yeah, I know.
Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Ethel Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio live from downtown Winnipeg. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. Could get a little wet later today. Pat's in with your forecast in a moment. A mild start, though, temperature-wise, that is. We're sitting at 4 degrees right now in Winnipeg. Well, this hour on the program, CBC host Ali Hassan's going to join us to choose the winning kid jokes from our listener line. If you called in, you want to be listening at 7:40, we'll tell you who's won tickets to CBC Radio's Laugh Out Loud recording in Winnipeg this week. Also this hour on the show, what does it mean for police to be accountable for their actions? We're going to take a closer look at the police watchdog, the IIU, how it works, and why some experts are calling for more transparency. Stay tuned. It's in the backdrop of some recent comments that were made by our police chief. So that's coming up this hour as well. Right now, let's go to Lauren Donnelly, who's here with morning headlines.
Good morning. From fans to players, there were some broken hearts last night when, for the second year in a row, the Bombers lost the Grey Cup final, this time to Montreal, who picked up a win 28-24. We'll hear the reaction. And the former head of Ontario's police watchdog says a decision to stay assault charges against an RCMP officer here in Manitoba is worrying. The constable kneeled on a man's neck during an arrest in 2019. That charge was stayed earlier this month after the Crown said there was no longer a reasonable likelihood of conviction. More on those stories coming up in your next local CBC News at 7:30.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's get into the forecast. Pat's a bit tied up here, so I'm just going to let you know what's coming our way. It's 4 degrees in the city of Winnipeg right now. In Brandon, it is -3. In Dauphin, we're sitting with a clear sky and 4 degrees as well. And up in Thompson, it is -2 currently. As I alluded to, a bit of a change on the way for us today. We'll start with some sunshine. This afternoon, it's going to be windy, wind southwest 30 to 50. But there's also a 60% chance of showers. So a little bit of rain, a little bit bit of wind, and it could be kind of an uglyish day. We'll see how that rolls out. Our high is 9, though, so it's going to be mild today. A few showers should end late this evening. Winds will lighten overnight. The low -2. Tomorrow, lots of sunshine and a high of 1 degree, and winds will be northwest tomorrow, 20 to 40. The rest of the week in Winnipeg, we do get colder. So on Wednesday, we're looking for a high of 0. Thursday's high is -8. The overnight low -16. But then Friday, we have lots of sunshine, but again, clear skies and colder days, a high of -7. So a bit of a change this week from what we've had the last couple of weeks for sure. In traffic, if you need to reach us this morning, we are doing well so far in terms of the commute. But if you have any updates for us, whether you're walking or you're driving or you're on your bike, we want to hear it all. 788-3093. $7:13 is the time right now, and up first this half hour on the show. When it comes to getting older and our health, we typically worry about things like heart failure, stroke, or cancer. Those are things that we, of course, want to avoid. But those who work in injury prevention say that more attention should be focused on the leading cause of hospitalization for seniors, and that is accidental falls. November is Fall Prevention Month, in fact, and it's a time for us all to think about that. It also prompted CBC's Blair Sanderson to take a closer look at this issue.
All right, so take me through this.
So press the black button.
Okay.
That'll put you guys, okay, yeah.
Mike Williams is showing me how to use his brand new motorized stair lift that runs from his basement to the first floor. It's for his mother-in-law, who's moving in. He says he's well aware of the risk accidental falls pose, especially to seniors.
We had a neighbor in the city. She started up her stairs, lost her balance, fell back 2 stairs. Her body shut down afterwards. Within a week, she was gone. And it was just the trauma of actually falling that started shutting her organs down and stuff. When you're old, to fall causes a lot of trauma to the inside of you.
It's this kind of story that's all too common, according to Pamela Fuselli. She's CEO of Parachute Canada, a charity focused on preventable injuries.
When I have conversations with people, they are very surprised when I tell them that falls are the number one reason for injury-related death, hospitalization, and emergency department visits for older adults in Canada.
And Health Canada has plenty of statistics on this. It says between 20 and 30% of people over 65 experience 1 or more falls each year, resulting in $2 billion in annual healthcare costs. It also says that 1/3 of seniors in long-term care got there following hospitalization from a fall. Fuselli says it doesn't have to be this way.
The preventability of injuries, and especially falls, I would say, people think maybe there's not a lot that we can do. It's just something that happens. And we know that we can predict a lot of these falls and why they happen. And therefore, we can look at solutions to preventing them.
This is just a warm-up, so don't do too much yet. We're warming up.
Exercise, like this Aquafit class, is one example. Fuselli says physical fitness improves your ability to catch yourself before a minor trip becomes a hard fall. It sounds obvious, but many seniors who are fearful of falling actually tend to avoid exercise. That's according to Caitlin MacArthur, a professor of physiotherapy at Dalhousie University.
Then it becomes a vicious cycle. So they're not moving as much. They start to lose their strength. They start to lose their balance. And then they're more likely to fall again. So it can become this vicious cycle. You have a fall, you become fearful of falling, you're actually more likely to fall again.
Other steps to avoid a fall include talking to your doctor to make sure your medications don't conflict with each other in a way that can lead to dizziness, wearing proper footwear, even indoors, making sure your prescription glasses are up to date, removing loose rugs around the house along with any other tripping hazards. Here's another suggestion you don't hear every day.
Continence management is also really important. So sometimes people are falling because they're rushing to the bathroom. Actually, a lot of times people are falling because they're rushing to the bathroom. So it's really important to address those continence issues and make sure that they are managed as well as they can be.
Speaking of the bathroom, grab bars around the toilet and shower are also a must for those at risk of falling. Which brings us back to Mike Williams' home and his new chairlift. Again, it's for his mother-in-law, along with the other accessible improvements he's made in the house. But he also realizes these changes will one day help him as well.
We all age. It happens to every one of us. So, if it's all in place already, then you don't have to worry about it. And the older you are, the harder it is to get it done, because now I can do a lot of the work.
It's an uplifting attitude toward the prevention of falling down. For CBC Radio, I'm Blair Sanderson.
It's not just how a story is told. It's about whose story it is to tell. It's not just playing what's new. It's setting the stage for what's next. It's not just about the game. It's bringing your game. It's not just trusted news. It's being where it matters because it matters. It's not how Canadian you are. It's who you are in Canada. It's not just one thing. CBC. It's a Canada thing.
It's 7:18 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. And up next on Information Radio, Winnipeg could see some changes to the way the city looks on Thursday. Council will vote to allow construction of fourplexes up to a height of 4 stories with some more ease. One of the other aspects is beyond the 4 stories is they will be built within 800 meters of frequent transit routes. Now, changing the zoning bylaws is the only way to access $192 million from the federal government's Housing Accelerator Fund. That is what Mayor Scott Gillingham has shared with us. He was on the show last week to talk about it.
The federal government's requirements that are imposing on us are actually in some ways fairly broad. There's not a lot of specificity. What we're trying to do right now is build in that specificity and really define what it is that can be built. What can be built on a certain lot size.
Do you see anything out there right now in Winnipeg where you're like, oh, that actually is too close to a fence or too tall or not right for this neighborhood? Or so far as mayor, when you look around, do you think that we've done okay?
I think for the most part, we're doing okay. I acknowledge this. I acknowledge that in some neighborhoods are more affected by infill than others. And I served for 8 years as a city councillor and was on the appeal committee's rotation often. I would, make decisions on these
What
builds.
neighborhoods are you thinking of?
Well, I know that Councillor Mays in St. Vital has talked about certain areas that he's, been dealing with and certain areas for Councillor Orlico in River Heights. In St. James, when I was city councillor, we had some infill development that some members of the community were opposed to as well. When we look, though, at the broader need of our community, 2 things I would emphasize once again. We need housing. We need it built. And I don't want to be... We can't be leaving federal money on the table that will leverage private sector investment. We can't fall behind other cities across this country. So we will find a made in Winnipeg solution, but it's important that we say yes to this fund.
Mayor Scott Gillingham's Inner Circle voted 5-1 last week to make the change and access the funding. The one dissenting vote is my next guest, St. Vital Councillor Brian Mays. Good morning.
Good morning.
So why did you say no? What are you worried about here?
Well, we're still trying to find the made in Winnipeg solution that the mayor talked about. My concern was we don't have some of those specifics in the resolution yet. We'd say, there'll be lot size limits for the fourplexes, but we don't know how big a lot size. Edmonton was able to specify that. So we're still working. We'll keep working till the vote on Thursday, but I just don't think we've got the specifics nailed down yet to try and make this, recognize there have been some problems.
So if a Winnipegger is listening and they're thinking, they heard the mayor say there'll be time to work out those specifics afterward, even if you put this through, you get the funding, and you're saying you'd rather they were worked out first. Should people be concerned that there won't be that time to make this a Winnipeg solution?
Well, I think we've got a few days yet. One of my colleagues put out an email saying, well, there'll still be a public hearing. There will be one public hearing a few years down the line on all of these zoning bylaw changes, and we'll have taken all the money by then. So it's a little hard to accept that, the public can come and make their deputations. But of course, we'll have to send back all the money if we vote no. So I think now is the time to make the specifics, find that solution, talk about, where I would like to encourage infill in the mature communities, which is why I voted for the infill guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of the few people around who actually voted for the Parker Lands development. So I'm hopeful we can still find some details, because there are concerns. And the mayor is right. Glenwood, people sort of say, well, the fears are never realized. We've had like 1,000 complaints. There have been some very questionable behavior by a lot of the developers there, and the impact on the neighbors. So,
can you give us some examples of that? Like, given that you have that example in your constituency?
Yeah, it's not just they put up a high building and it blocked the sunshine from my flowers. It's more the developer blocks the roads, the sidewalks, the lanes. People can't get their handy transit vehicle. People have people have their fence fall into the construction pit. Just some really badly done infill development. So I think that's a concern. People say, well, you should have had some enforcement. Well, the city didn't do anything. So easy to be on the outside saying the fears are never realized, but we've had some really, in the real world, there have been probably 1,000 complaints to my office. So I think certain neighborhoods will be more adversely affected. I think we have to realize that and say, okay, it shouldn't be on 25-foot wide lots if you're a 4-plex. It should be more than 50 feet wide and more than 100 feet deep. Just limits like that. We need, we've got till Thursday, so got a lot of goodwill, so I think we can spell out some limits.
The mayor talked about the importance of having access to the money. Would you agree with that? Do you agree that that's critical, that Winnipeg access this money?
I think there's been a fair bit of spin on this. I don't think we're going to get the 192. Even the developers are saying they're being told it'll be in the 120s. Does that completely change the debate? I don't think so, but I think it would be nice to get the money. I voted for a number of big infill projects on major corridors. I agree with the mayor on that. I agree we could densify the shopping malls. It's really the concerns around the 4-plexes and the 4-story height limit that's a concern in terms of. I think that's a pretty big change in a lot of neighborhoods, and we can put some limits in place that make sense before we get to Thursday.
So I'm wondering about where you see this being a benefit in Winnipeg. You've outlined a little bit of that, but you started by saying mature neighborhoods, and I was going to ask for an example of what you meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, the infill guidelines targeted infill into the neighborhoods built roughly before 1960. I would like to see us continue with that. We put height limits on. We had a lot of quality control in terms of the design, some good work done by our staff. This would really throw out a lot of that work. And I voted for that, and that took about 2 years. So people have been, trashing me on social media, writing me emails saying, well, why are you against this? I'm actually in favor. I want to keep going in the mature communities. 4-plexes everywhere, and the federal letter says 4-plexes everywhere. Well, I don't think we need a lot of them in River Park South or south of the perimeter on St. Norbert or in the far reaches of Sage Creek. I don't think that promotes densification and compactness, which is what we keep talking about. So hopefully get some more emphasis on building up in the mature communities.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mays, for being on with us. Obviously, an ongoing story. We'll see how the vote goes Thursday and see between now and then, as you said, what might be discussed to hammer this out in a way that will be good for Winnipeg, no matter what happens with it. So appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me on. Apologies for the post-Grey Cup voice.
Oh, right. Well, we're about to talk about that. Brian Mays, the Winnipeg City Councillor for the St. Vital ward. By the way, we have a request to speak with the Federal Housing Minister, Sean Fraser, as well, and the City of Halifax we're planning to reach out to. They came up with their own solution to a similar request to access the federal government's money here, so money across the country, rather. So we'll find out what their solution looked like. Well, let's talk Grey Cup. Sorry, just had a moment of emotion. But honestly, what a game for Montreal. I mean, really. Yeah. So Scott Regehr is here with sports. For the vast majority of last night's game, it looked like the Bombers would get it done, but they did not.
Yeah, a 3-point lead over Montreal, and then the final minute happened, and you could kind of see it developing in slow motion if you're a Bombers fan. Anyhow, Cody Fajardo, the quarterback for Montreal, with an 83-yard march down the field. In one instance, he threw a completion on 3rd down and long to Cole Speaker to keep things going, and then it culminated, as any Bombers fan can tell you, with that Corey Philpott touchdown that eventually gave Montreal Montreal the win. I just said Corey Philpott, that's his dad, Tyson Philpott. But yeah, devastation for the Bombers, to be sure, including for their leader, Zach Collaros.
Played to win the game, played to win the last one. Then we came up short. Montreal was a few plays better than us. Which is really sad, because there's a lot of good guys in the locker room, and guys that might not be able to play again, and you want to win for them, and the guys that could be out there. This is a lot of good people. You just don't want to let people down. It's terrible.
Just gutted, Zach Collaros. They're hard to listen to him. But he's right. I mean, there's going to be a changeover this season, heading into next season. Brady Oliveira, who was just outstanding running the ball yesterday, Marcy.
Yeah, he was.
Is he going to re-sign? I mean, I would expect so, but he's going to be expensive. He becomes a free agent. Dalton Schoen, who surprised a lot of people by showing up and playing in that game, even if he's had an ankle injury that's kept him out for close to 2 months. And then you have Kyle Walters, the general manager, who's out of contract. These are things that need to be sorted, but in the meantime, there's questions abounding today. If you listen to the sports followers saying, is this a dynastic team or not? Well, of course the Bombers are a dynasty. 4 straight appearances and 2 for 2, and the 2 losses could just as easily have been victories. So what a run of form it's been, and I expect it will continue regardless of some changes in personnel next season.
They're a dynasty, but not a dynasty in the big game. So that's what has to be analyzed, right? Because last year, I think a lot of Bomber fans, at least, and we know we're armchair fans on the couch, so what do we know? But I think last year, a lot of people might say that we lost the game. We had some missed kicks and plays, didn't look like the Mo was there. Montreal came for it last night. Don't underestimate the underdog, the streak, and the play. I mean, not to take it away from them, because they really played us.
Yeah, and Montreal was a team without solidity when it comes to ownership. Only like half a year ago, brought in a new quarterback, Cody Fajardo, who nobody else, he says this himself, really wanted in free agency, right? And here he is throwing 3 touchdowns, winning the MVP. It's a wonderful story for a neutral, just not so much who follow and bleed blue and gold.
Oh, come on home, Bombers. Don't be afraid of the fans.
That's right.
How did Hamilton do as host?
On the whole, very well, I think. Events during Grey Cup week were well attended. The game itself, a sellout, which isn't a guarantee, unfortunately, these days. And I thought Green Day was pretty good, too, as the halftime act. But yeah, all that said, though, criticisms that it was too Anglo-focused this week in Hamilton. There was little Coupe Grey signage to be found, and the league reportedly, Marcy, had to scramble on Saturday, the day before the game, just to get a French logo, LCF, on the field. And I know Alouettes defensive back Marc-Antoine Dequoy, he talked to the broadcaster RDS saying, you look everywhere, it's written in English, but we're taking the cup back to Quebec and we're going to lift it at home. So,
en français.
not en français. Yep. There you go. First cup for them since 2010.
All right. Thanks a lot, Scott.
You betcha.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. We're not done analyzing the Grey Cup because CBC's Brittany Greenslade is there. So she's going to join us live after 8 o'clock with a full analysis. But we're about to hear more of that on your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg at 7:30. It's 3 degrees and mostly cloudy at the airport. Mainly sunny today, chance of showers late this afternoon, windy with a high of 9. An assault charge has been stayed against an RCMP officer who kneeled on a man's neck during an arrest. Constable Eric Gurian was charged in 2022 after video of the 2019 arrest at the Winnipeg airport surfaced. That charge was stayed earlier this month after the Crown said there was no longer a reasonable likelihood of conviction. Ian Scott is the former head of Ontario's police watchdog. He says the charge being stayed sends a troubling message.
If I were a member of the public in Manitoba, I would be concerned about whether or not there's a double standard with respect to police prosecutions.
Scott says he thinks the video alone should be enough for the case to go to trial. You can read more on this story on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Pressure is mounting on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to do more in the Israel-Gaza conflict. A rally calling for a ceasefire was held in Winnipeg yesterday as similar rallies happened across Canada. Bishar Azar is half Lebanese and half Palestinian. He says he feels frustrated. Some other countries aren't intervening.
Of course, we need ceasefire, but it looks like none of those countries who are really
European, the US, and Canada, they're not really interfering seriously.
He also says he hoped people in Gaza would see more aid from other countries. The prime minister has held off calling for a ceasefire. The government is instead backing a sustained pause in the fighting to get aid in and hostages out. A delegation of about 60 Canadians has arrived in Israel. The group includes 5 MPs, including Liberal Anthony Housefather. He's calling the visit a solidarity mission. Janice McGregor reports.
Their stated goal is to give MPs a better understanding of what happened in Israel when Hamas attacked on October 7th and what the Israeli government's plans are now. The MPs are going to be meeting with the families of the hostages taken that day, add their voices to those demanding their immediate release. Housefather said earlier today on a social media post that they have met with the survivors of the Hamas attack on the Kfar Aza kibbutz. He said this trip is, quote, a solidarity mission, and that the MPs understand why Israel never wants to let this happen again. He gave a phone interview to CBC News over the weekend. He said he wanted to make sure that it was clear to the Israelis that Canadians are allies and also remind them of the overall approach of the Canadian government, which includes a track record of casting votes siding with Israel at the United Nations. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
The city of Winnipeg is struggling to keep up with broken bus shelters. Nearly 300 bus shelters have had broken glass this year, about a third of all of the shelters in the city. 115 are still missing glass, many of them along Main Street. Transit rider Kimberly Chastelaine waited at a shelter at Redwood and Main that was missing all of its glass.
I don't feel safe, especially at nighttime. My kids don't take the bus. Nobody wants to come down this way, especially if it's broken.
The city is planning a pilot project to test shatterproof glass in at least one bus shelter in the coming months. And there were a lot of disappointed football fans in Manitoba last night after the Blue and Gold lost the Grey Cup to the Montreal Alouettes in the last seconds of the fourth quarter. Ben Friesen wore gold face paint and Bombers socks to watch the game from the Exchange District. He says it's been 2 years of heartbreak, but he'll take a championship loss over no championships at all.
It hurts, it stings, but you know what? The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, we got a competitive team. The last 4 years we've been to the Grey Cup. As a fan, that's all we can ask for.
In the end, the 110th Grey Cup was a victory for Montreal, 28-24. And last night, Blue and Gold players were reeling from the loss as well. Zach Collaros is the team's quarterback. He says the team will use losing in the CFL championship game for the second straight year as motivation. But for the time being, the loss hurts.
We're just all upset right now, I think. And it's certainly something that you want to fuel you. You know, you don't want to go the other way with it. And I think we're all professionals in there and people that will use it to fuel them. But right now it's hard. It hurts.
Collaros also says he appreciates his teammates that battled through injuries, even if they shouldn't have been on the field. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thanks very much, Lauren.
Thanks, Marcy.
Oh, Brady Oliveira. I got to say, though, he was hit last night. And you know how the old turning point in the game, you look for these moments of like what a team's thinking or where they're at. When he got hit and taken down.
I know exactly what
I know
you're
exactly
talking
what
about.
hit. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Except the player's name escapes me, so I apologize, Montreal. But yeah, I thought, yeah, they're coming for it. Like they're not giving up until the last minute of this game. A couple interesting things. So there was one play where the Bombers threw, and I thought I didn't know why they weren't keeping going with the rushing and giving Oliveira the ball. And then we didn't end up with a touchdown on that particular run. I think it was in the third quarter.
Well, it got a bit predictable every first down. That's what they've done all season, right? Give the ball to Oliveira. Yeah. But Montreal's like, yeah, we know Brady's getting the ball. I just thought not a lot of imagination with the play calling in that game. They didn't mix it up enough. No, I don't know. It was just a bit frustrating. It was like the Bombers played well enough to lose. Like they lost the game, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It was and the heartbreak. I mean, I feel terrible for the team though. This is just a human in me, of course, right? You look at last year, this year. The franchise, the Sports News, will be analyzing what comes next, but. Yeah, it's really too bad. And it's too bad because, O'Shea stayed there and he's going to stay there, but the team gets built. They gel together. They work together. They push toward their goals. And as we've been hearing in the news this morning, now what will the Bombers look like next year? So there's going to be some changes for sure and free agency as we've been analyzing. And All right.
Well, a dish of disappointment served with your breakfast this morning. That's
Wash
right.
your jerseys. Get on with it. All right, let's get into traffic, actually. I neglected to mention something before the 7:30 news that's a problem.
That is okay. So Mark and Jeff with the G both called. Traffic is backed up northbound Keewatin, just approaching Selkirk. There's been a collision there at that intersection. Some people are doing U-turns just before then by the, there's kind of a strip mall in that area. So this is north of the Logan underpass and before Selkirk. That's where the tie-up is. So thank you for the calls at 788-3093. Let's look at weather. We've got a couple of warm days before the cold stuff comes. We're going to start in the north because this is a regional forecast. We're going to start with the north because we have a winter storm watch for Churchill and York. Could see some blizzard conditions Monday night through till Thursday with some blowing snow thanks to a low pressure system that is intensifying over Hudson Bay early this week, rather. Also, we have a freezing rain warning in effect for Gillam, Shamattawa, Island Lake, God's Lake, Oxford House, and Red Sucker Lake. Could see this band of freezing rain impact parts of northern Manitoba early this morning, and it'll taper off by later this morning. And staying with the north, Thompson, you are -2 right now, going to get to a +1. Mix of sun and cloud, and then more clouds into the afternoon with periods of snow and that +1. And gusty winds to 50 from the northwest as well. Tonight, dipping down to a -10. Tomorrow, Thompson, you're going to be mainly cloudy and a high of -8. Churchill, you have some light snow, -6 on the way to a -2 with that winter storm watch. Brandon, -3, clear, a mix of sun and cloud on the way to, it's clear right now, I should say, but mix of sun and cloud today on the way to a high of 6. Gusty winds to 60 kilometers per hour, though, by midday, and those will be coming from the west. And Winnipeg, we're down 1 in the past hour. We're now at 4, but we are on the way today to a high of 9. And later afternoon, with that 9, could see a 60% chance of showers and gusty winds as well to 50 from the southwest. Tonight, we'll dip down to a -2. Could see some more showers. Tomorrow, sunshine and 1. Then we make the turn. Wednesday's a 0. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Here's your daytime highs. -8, -7, -6 with overnight lows. Thursday into Friday, -16. So we're getting colder, certainly. Some quick temps for you right now. Gimli, you're 1 on the way to an 8. Morden Winkler is 8 right now on the way to a 12. Very warm temps for this time of morning in that Pembina Valley. Melita, you're -1. You'll see an 8 as well. And White Shell's going to be an 11. Once again, we are at 4 in the downtown.
Thank you, Pat Kanuga.
Thank you.
Time right now, 21 minutes to 8. Well, do you recognize that theme? It's from Laugh Out Loud on CBC Radio, and a live taping of the show is happening in Winnipeg on Wednesday at the Gas Station Arts Centre. So the host, Ali Hassan, joins us now for a very important task. He is going to choose the 2 kids who told the ticket-winning jokes on our listener line. So we took calls all last week. Everyone was awesome, so I'm super glad that it's not my job. Ali Hassan's with us this morning. Hey there.
Good morning. I also can barely stand the pressure of doing something like this. It's too much.
I know. Well, it was such a fun idea until you just remembered you have to judge the kids.
Exactly. These poor kids. And let's be clear. I'm mainly judging the parents. Does that make it better?
Yes.
I don't think that makes it better. I'm not sure if it does.
So if the joke's bad, then you're parenting terrible.
Yeah, I didn't say that. You said
I said that. How you feeling?
I mean, every parent is doing something that I did for most of my career, which is write off the easy comedy writing of their children. And it's, we all do it. I mean, my kids were writing jokes for me. Sometimes they were ready to go, stage ready, without any editing required. So I respect it. I respect the whole process.
You want to get right into judging, or you want to talk about the show first? What's going to be easier for your stress around this?
Well, yes, let's talk about the show. Let's talk about the fact that some professional comedians are being recorded at our Laugh Out Loud show on Wednesday of this week, on the 22nd, and we're pretty excited. I mean, we haven't been in Winnipeg since 2013, so basically a decade. And there is a very hot scene in Winnipeg, and we're recording these people to be on CBC to get national airplay. That usually raises all their profile. People hear about them across the country who may not know them. They buy their albums, they book them on shows. So it's an amazing platform, and it was very difficult to choose just 6 or 7 acts out of Winnipeg because the scene is so exciting right now. But we did do that, and we'll have Benji Rothman, Spencer Adamus, Danielle Kayahara, Emmanuel Lemuro, Mike Green, Paul Rablauskas, and Kirsten Einerson on the show on Wednesday at the Gas Station Arts Theater. Very, very excited. It's going to be a phenomenal time. As I said, 10 years in the making, so I'm pretty pumped about it.
So cool. Now, for people that haven't been to a live taping before, and during the Comedy Fest, we have live tapings, so people might have been to some of them, but how will this one go? If somebody wins tickets, they'll see all of these comedians kind of reset. You reset every show?
We don't do, no, this is a full show. This is a 90-minute show. I host the show. I'm the MC. And then we just bring on these comics doing their best sort of 12 to 15 minutes of CBC friendly comedy. Obviously, it's not a late night dirty show or anything like that. It's a great show that for a national audience.
All right, we've stretched long enough. We're procrastinating. You ready to hear all the entries?
You know that I am. Yes, I am ready.
Okay, so we're going to play all of the entries, kids. These are all your jokes in a collage. Then Allie's going to judge. She's going to pick 2 winners. We can only pick 2. As I said, you were all awesome. And then we will play those winning calls at the end again so we can enjoy the jokes. So what are you listening for?
That's a tough one, right? What am I listening for? That's too much. What am I, like on a national judging competition here? I'm listening for something that just hits me right away with a good punch of comedy. I think that's all I can say here. Yeah.
I'm laughing because my husband always says the same thing. He's like, it's just like listeners are just trying to win a little prize. Why are you being so hard on them? Okay. So we're just looking for a laugh. Here's the entries that the kids called in with.
Hi, it's Xavier, and I have a joke. What did the pirate say when he turned 80? Our matey. Bye.
This is Kenzie Bagnall leaving a joke for the Laugh Out Loud contest.
What do you call a cat that never tells the truth? A lion. Hi, my name is Cedric, and I'm 9 years old, and I have a joke. Do I like making jokes about jail? Guilty. Thanks. Bye.
Hi, my name is Jenny, and I'm 10, and my joke is that how is diarrhea hereditary? It runs in your genes.
This is a joke from Arlo Cron. Okay, Arlo, tell your joke.
Why did the chicken cross the road? Because!
Thank you.
This is Casey Bagnall entering her joke for the Laugh Out Loud contest.
There is 2 cobras talking. One said, "Can I ask you a question?" "Yeah, sure." "Are we poisonous?" "Yeah, why?" "'Cause I bit my lip." My name is Clara. My joke is, what kind of a bird never sings the words to a song? A hummingbird.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kai Thomas, and I'm calling you today to tell you my joke. A pair of cows were talking in a field. One says, "Have you heard of the mad cow disease that's going around?" "Yeah," says the other cow. "Makes me glad I'm a penguin."
There they are, Ali Hassan. What'd you think? First impression.
I'm so impressed by the confidence, and I'm impressed by the desire to want to be part of this. These kids are not winning anything. It's for their parents. So there's a bit of a benevolence there. There's a little respect for parents. They're probably not coming to a late night comedy show. It's probably, mom and dad who are going to benefit. So I really do. I love all these kids. I'm going to tell you who the winners are.
Okay. This is my lame drum roll. This is all I got for you.
In life, there are winners.
I'm like slapping the studio table. I don't know if it's working. 2 winners, 4 tickets. Who are they?
I'm going to go with Jenny, who delivered a diarrhea joke impeccably. A clean, dirty joke, as we say. Thank you, Jenny. That is, her dad, Mark, brought her to the phone. And right after Jenny was Arlo, because I don't know, he got me quickly and powerfully, and it was a fresh take on a why did the chicken cross the road joke. Thank you very much, Arlo and Jenny. That's who I'm going to go with. Congratulations to both of them and to all these kids who submitted their jokes.
Why don't you inspire the kids a little bit, Ellie, while you're on with us this morning? Like, were you a funny kid, or when did you think, oh, you know what, I'm funny?
I was a funny kid, but there's no rewards in being a funny kid. There's a lot of trips to the principal's office, and every opportunity to make my friends laugh, I took it, and it wasn't great. I got sent out of class a fair amount, which I don't recommend that. It's not, my education suffered. Kids, I only discovered what I wanted to do with my life in my mid-30s. That's a lot of wasted years of a lot of not making money. So please do not follow this example, but where appropriate, use your platform and your God-given gifts wherever you can, as long as it makes sense.
Make it a side hustle. Call listener line a side hustle. When you've done this in other cities and kids have called in, I wonder if there was a difference in the jokes. Our kids seem to do, there were a lot of like animal jokes in there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe, Manitoba, there's a larger hunting community. Maybe animals are front and center. I'm not sure. Making a weird theory out of nowhere here.
I know.
But it always runs the gamut. There are, 8-year-old storytellers. There's absurdism. There's always a knock-knock, a fresh knock-knock joke or a chicken cross the road. It speaks to the diversity of humor and how there's a style of joke telling and a type of joke telling for everyone.
Thank you very much for judging this morning, for coming on, telling us about the show. I hope it's awesome. I have no doubt it will be Wednesday night in Winnipeg.
I'll see you at the Gas Station Theatre, Winnipeg. Thank you so much. I appreciate you this morning.
Take
Bye.
care. That's host Ali Hassan on Zoom with us this morning. So the Gas Station Theatre Wednesday, a live taping of CBC's Laugh Out Loud with comedians from all across the city. So it sounds like a great lineup. Congratulations, Arlo and Jenny. You have won tickets for your families. So make sure they thank you appropriately and enjoy the show.
She's daring, she's critical, and ultimately hopeful. Writer and filmmaker Astra Taylor explores our shared sense of insecurity and anxiety and proposes a new path forward. Hi, I'm Nala Ayed. Join me all week as Ideas presents the 2023 CBC Massey Lectures, The Age of Insecurity, coming together as things fall apart.
Ideas, weeknights at 8:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
10 to 8 the time, 4 degrees the temperature, partly cloudy in Winnipeg. Northbound Keewatin at Selkirk, a collision had been blocking traffic. Slow going there. Hopefully it's improved. Northbound Logan is where it's really slow. 788-3093 if you need to reach us this morning. Well, next on the program, comments from the Winnipeg Police Chief about an ongoing IIU investigation. The Independent Investigative Unit of Manitoba, the police watchdog, has renewed questions around the effectiveness of the IIU. On October 15th, police say they were called to an intersection in Winnipeg's West End for reports of a man acting erratically. Elias Whitehead, an Indigenous man, died while in police custody. The Independent Investigative Unit was called to investigate shortly after. The IIU is tasked with probing into serious incidents involving police. Now, earlier this month, during an interview with CBC's Josh Crabb, Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe said this about the ongoing IIU investigation.
From my perspective, the Winnipeg Police will be very cooperative with that process. I expect that our officers will meet with the IIU investigators and give an accounting of what occurred and why they did what they did. So as much, it's never quick enough for the families. I can appreciate that. Sadly, these kinds of investigations, they take a little bit of time, and it is going to take a little bit of time before the family and the community gets the whole investigation. I mean, on the one right note here, and I know IIU now has a director of Indigenous and Community Relations, so I think that person will be in a better position to help navigate the family through this process. So I'm confident that our members are well trained. The second part of that statement is, we will cooperate with the investigation, and that will mean that the officers come in and account for their actions.
So that is Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe. Now, according to the IIU's website, while officers under investigation are invited to take part in the investigation, they don't actually have to. Now, that means that subject officers don't have to do interviews or submit any notes. The Winnipeg Police Association declined to comment on Chief Smythe's statement. And when CBC asked Winnipeg Police about the statement, they said that despite the comments, Smythe can't actually get involved with the investigation. Corey Sheffman is here. He's a lawyer investigating in Indigenous and human rights law. He's represented Winnipeg families affected by police. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Thanks for having me.
So can you give us some clarity around this for listeners here? What is the responsibility of police to cooperate with the IIU?
Well, you got it right. Manitoba legislation says that the subject officer, the officer being investigated, doesn't actually need to give their notes or do an interview, but witness officers do. There's reasons for this around self-incrimination and trying to protect the subject of the investigation from getting themselves into trouble. But in my view, police officers occupy a different role in society. They're trusted with being allowed to exercise a certain amount of force, and with that trust should come a higher expectation of accountability.
So does it work differently in other places? Are officers in other places, who are involved directly, compelled? Do they have to testify or to give their account?
I'm not sure about the particular rules in different jurisdictions. What we know in Manitoba, though, is that the current system just isn't working.
And how often do officers cooperate with IIU investigations here?
That's a good question. I mean, one of the problems with the IIU is that there's not a lot of transparency around how it operates. There's a lot of secrecy, and we know that the IIU has actually had to sue the Winnipeg Police Service in the past for not cooperating. So there's I think looking at those statistics and looking at trends would be really helpful if they were available. And then, of course, also, taking Chief Smythe's comments at face value, I think what would be really helpful would be to see him and his leadership team putting real pressure on the officers underneath him to cooperate in the way he mentioned. It's one thing to say, I expect them to cooperate, but, as the follow-up statement said, he doesn't seem to actually be doing anything about that.
To look at this from a different perspective, we live in a time where a lot of people will think of themselves and their families and protecting themselves in any kind of situation. What do you say to someone who listens to this and argues, police do need those protections too to be able to step away and not be directly involved?
Oh, I mean, I'd say anyone who uses violence should be held accountable regardless of who they are. And a police officer who's allowed to use violence under the law should have a higher level of accountability. Police officers are performing a very important function in our society, protecting people. But with that comes, we need to know that they're using their responsibilities in a responsible manner, that they're not abusing that authority. Now, if they're not doing anything wrong, then it shouldn't matter that they're having to cooperate with this independent investigation. But if they are...
Yeah, go on, please.
If they are abusing their authority, then that's what this process is meant to show. And so if people support the police, if people think that the police are doing their job appropriately, then they should also support accountability.
What is the relationship between the Winnipeg Police and the IIU? Just to outline that with some more detail.
Sure. So the system is set up in order for the IIU to be independent, just like its name says, and the person who leads it is a civilian, not a police officer, although in the past it's been a Crown prosecutor. The investigators are mostly former police officers, retired police officers, but they are meant to keep a distance between the two organizations. A couple years ago, that resulted in, like I mentioned before, the IIU actually suing the Winnipeg Police because the IIU said the Winnipeg Police weren't following the rules on how to cooperate with the IIU. Basically, whenever a police officer, either off duty or on duty, uses a force against another person or injures another person or God forbid, kills another person, the police service is supposed to call the IIU, and the IIU is supposed to take over the investigation. This system came out of a number of incidents in Winnipeg and Manitoba where the Winnipeg Police were investigating itself. and there was concern in the public that those investigations weren't proper.
What has to happen, in your view, for the IIU to become more transparent? And we've had this conversation over many years, but what are what's at the top of your list that you're calling for?
Absolutely. I think the number one thing is that all officers should have to participate, fully cooperate with the independent investigation unit, and the results of the independent investigation unit's reports should be made public, not kept secret.
Thank you very much for being on with us this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Marcy. Have a good day.
You too. That's Corey Sheffman, lawyer specializing in Indigenous and human rights law. The IIU has a frequently asked question section on their website. If you want to read more about what rights police have while under investigation and how they outline their work, you can go there. The Winnipeg Police Association declined a request for comment. We asked the Winnipeg Police for comment, and a spokesperson said, quote, "This is now an IIU investigation, and as such, the chief would not get involved in any aspect of it," end quote. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, and Lauren Donnelly is here with headlines.
Good morning. The city has a plan to deal with all the broken bus shelters, but it could come with a hefty price tag. About a third of all bus shelters in the city have had broken glass this year. And it looks like inflation has taken another dip. We'll have more on the latest numbers coming up after World Report.
Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome.
Weather-wise, 4 degrees in Winnipeg. The high today, 9. It's going to be rainy and windy this afternoon. Late in the day, we could see a shift. Update on the situation northbound Keewatin at Selkirk. So the collisions that had been blocking traffic for about 40 minutes or so, Winnipeg Traffic Management Centre is now reporting that there are at least several emergency crews on scene. Southbound Median Lane, though, is blocked as well. So Keewatin and Selkirk, avoid the area if you can. It sounds like it's going to be tough to get through and slow going. Including on Logan. 788-3093 if you need to update anything in traffic. So we're partly cloudy out there this morning, and still ahead on the program after 8 o'clock. Is it the shocker in Steel City? What happened in the Grey Cup? We're going to get a post-game debrief with CBC's Brittany Greenslade, who is still in Hamilton this morning after the Bombers' loss to Montreal. Stay with us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's 1 minute to 8 o'clock, and World Report is next.
On Cue with Tom Power.
After writing hit songs for the likes of Adele and the Chicks, Dan Wilson returned to his band Semisonic to make their first album in more than 20 years. Dan will tell you about the band's breakout hit Closing Time and what he's brought back to his band from making all those hits. That's coming up on Cue, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Following an environmental conference in Kenya, activists and scientists are urging the world to take real action on a plastics treaty. The quest to cut out plastics and how Kenya is leading the way, that's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Ethel Musa. There are reports of heavy fighting around yet another hospital in the Gaza Strip. That sound you hear is from video recorded near the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. It shows Israeli tanks stationed outside. Medical workers say nearly 700 people are sheltering inside the facility, and dozens of people were killed or injured in airstrikes overnight. Meanwhile, a group of Canadian MPs are visiting Israel today. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau with that part of the story. Janice, what's the reason for this trip?
There are two Liberals on this trip from the government side, Anthony Housefather and Marco Mendicino, as well as 3 representatives from the Conservative caucus, Melissa Lantsman, Marty Morantz, and Michelle Rempel-Garner. They're part of a larger delegation there of about 60 from Canada, which also includes leaders from Canadian organizations like the Toronto Jewish Federation and the United Jewish Appeal. The MPs are going to be taking meetings over the next couple of days to get a better understanding of what happened in Israel when Hamas attacked on October 7th, and also what Israel's doing in response. Here's Housefather, interviewed by our colleagues on the ground earlier today after speaking with some of the survivors.
It was really moving. It made me understand what it was like to live
in a safe room, wondering if you were going to be alive for the very next minute or if your loved ones were going to be killed.
He's portrayed this trip as a, quote, solidarity mission. He said he wanted to make sure that it was clear to Israelis that Canadians are allies.
The Prime Minister has faced some criticism from Israel for comments he made last week. Is that expected to come up on this visit?
Well, I have to note that this trip was in the works before Trudeau's comments last week provoked controversy and criticism from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trudeau maintains that Israel, yes, has a right to defend itself, but he's also expressed concern about how the operation in Gaza is taking innocent lives. Reporters were trying to clarify his message last Friday in San Francisco.
You're not using the expression maximum restraint.
Oh, sorry,
Why
maximum
not?
restraint.
Okay, fair enough.
Trudeau said when he speaks to the Israeli government, as he did again last week, he asks for everything to be done to protect civilians because the loss of women and children is not only heartbreaking, it impedes Israel's ability to come to a long-term, stable two-state solution with the Palestinians.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Kiev today. The unannounced visit to Ukraine's capital comes as international resources are being stretched because of the Israel-Hamas war. The CBC's Richard Madden is joining us from Washington. Richard, what can you tell us about Austin's visit today?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. Secretary Austin made that unannounced visit in a symbolic gesture of what he called unwavering support for Ukraine. It was a high-profile push to keep cash and weapons flowing to the region amid the growing pressure as international focus and resources are stretched by Israel's war against Hamas. The secretary flew into Poland over the weekend and took that 9-hour train ride into Kyiv. Here's what he said upon his arrival.
This is still a very dangerous environment, no question about it. And I hope that based upon your work, based upon the work of the other 50 countries that are working with us, that we can move the needle forward and help Ukraine do what it wants to do, and that is regain its sovereign territory.
Now, Secretary Austin is scheduled to meet with top officials and address Ukraine's urgent military needs as the war enters yet another cold winter of fighting.
Now, despite Austin's visit to show the United States' ongoing support for Ukraine, there is division in Washington when it comes to funding Ukraine's defense. Richard, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, domestic politics further complicating Secretary Austin's visit. The Pentagon's budget for Ukraine is running low this year, and a divided Congress is stalling on more cash for Ukraine. As you'll recall, there was no aid package in the latest spending bill, so officials have been urging Congress to provide additional money. But a growing number of Republicans are opposed to more funding to Ukraine unless Congress puts funding to America's southern border, and it's unclear if or when lawmakers will carve out a separate spending bill to address that.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.
The federal government's fall economic statement will be tabled tomorrow, and CBC News has learned some of what will be included. Billions of dollars in loans to build new rental housing, and $1 billion in a fund dedicated to more affordable housing. Karina Roman has more from Ottawa.
We won't be able to do everything. Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says the fiscal update to be tabled tomorrow will be restrained.
It's a hard balance to strike, making the necessary investments and at the same time being fiscally responsible.
A senior government source who isn't authorized to speak publicly says the economic statement will include $15 billion in 10-year loans for new rental housing construction, a $1 billion fund dedicated to getting affordable housing built, and a new enforceable charter of rules that mortgage lenders must abide by when dealing with homeowners at financial risk. The update will also include proposed changes to the Competition Act. And Radio Canada confirms what the Toronto Star first reported, that Ottawa intends to crack down on owners of short-term rental properties when they are located in areas where such rentals are restricted or prohibited, for example, in Quebec. The fiscal situation is tight. Growth will be slower than what was projected last spring, and current high interest rates will constrain government borrowing.
We have been warning about this day.
Goldie Hyder heads up the Business Council of Canada.
There's no sense of how we're ever going to get back to a balanced budget, how it is that we're going to be able to control our interest costs, our borrowing costs.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre also wants the government to balance the books, but the NDP, who support the Liberals rely on, is calling calling for more action on housing and affordability. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
Argentina has a new president. Far-right libertarian Javier Milei defeated Economy Minister Sergio Massa. Milei won support on promises of a dramatic shakeup in government and overhauling the central bank.
El modelo de la decadencia ha llegado a su fin. No hay vuelta atrás.
He says the model of decadence has come to an end. Milei, who has little political experience, has been likened to former U.S. President Donald Trump. In fact, Trump called Milei to personally congratulate him. A coroner's inquest examining the death of a mentally ill man who died in an Ontario jail will begin later today. Solomon Fakiri died inside his cell at the Central East Correctional Centre in December of 2016. In the moments before his death, Fakiri was shackled, pepper sprayed, and face down with his head covered. Provincial police did not lay any charges against the guards involved. The inquest will be held virtually over 15 days and will hear from about 20 witnesses. Fakiri's family says they hope the inquest will provide answers about Solomon's death and the time that he spent in jail. Some Inuit artists say international conservation rules are hurting their livelihoods. Their concerns are in the spotlight after an American doctor was convicted in the U.S. for leaving Canada with sculptures made of whale teeth and walrus tusk. Matthew Lapierre has more.
In his studio in Belleville, Ontario, Ruben Anton Kamangapik carves whalebone into ornate sculptures. He says it's an important part of his culture.
I really love working with whalebone. Like I said, it makes me feel like I'm visiting my grandfather.
Even though the whalebone is decades old, the species it comes from is protected by an international treaty called CITES. That makes it hard, even impossible, to sell the kind of art Kamangapik loves to make to other countries, including the U.S. An American doctor pleaded guilty last month to illegally crossing the U.S. border with a trunkful of Inuit art. He had statues carved from sperm whale teeth and a walrus tusk, which he purchased at Montreal art gallery Image Boreal. Canadian authorities have now charged the gallery with illegally selling sperm whale teeth and producing false documents, but they have yet to enter a plea. Their lawyer refused to comment. Some conservationists say export restrictions are important to protect species at risk. Barry Kent McKay is the director of the Animal Alliance of Canada.
The only way to assure that the artisans will have something that they can carve is to protect the walrus and prevent it from becoming extinct.
Inuit artists such as Kamangapik say loosening the restrictions won't lead to an increase in animal deaths.
We hunt animals in a very respectful way. We hunt for what we need.
Kamangapik says he's going to continue carving bone, even if it's not easy to sell. Matthew Lapierre, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Hello, everybody, and good morning. It is 5 degrees in Winnipeg this Monday morning and partly cloudy downtown. Thanks for joining us here on CBC's Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the app. Well, it was a nail-biter of a game. You can say that about it. We're going to get a Grey Cup post-game debrief from CBC's Brittany Greenslade in Hamilton this half hour. Comments already coming in this morning. Valley Marcos saying, I was fortunate enough. I watched this game in a bar in Cozumel, Mexico. There were about 7 or 8 of us from Winnipeg watching. Disappointing outcome, but a great time experience, and I'm still proud of the Bombers. Laurie Nelson saying, an exciting game. Denise McRae saying, exciting, coming down to that last minute. And Judy Gimaldo saying, exciting, but wrong outcome. Darn. Stay with us. More analysis of the Grey Cup. Right now, Lauren Donnelly's in with headlines.
Good morning. As you say, Marcy, the Bombers may have lost their second Grey Cup in a row, but some fans say they won't hold it against the team. That includes Doreen Geary. The superfan is 94 years old. She watched the game with her family at Victoria Hospital. We'll have more reactions to last night's loss. And yesterday, hundreds of people turned out in downtown Winnipeg to put pressure on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to do more in the Israel-Gaza conflict. The rally called for a ceasefire. We'll have more on that coming up up in your next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, weather-wise this weekend, you got to say, Winnipeg, not much to complain about, especially yesterday, Pat. It was just so mild out.
These temps are just like not really ready for it yet. I mean, I'll take them, right? But
What's coming, you mean?
I was bracing for, when we got that snow a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, okay, it's going to be a
It's
long
over.
winter. Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's been just beautiful out. We got a couple of days of still the warmer temps, and then we get cooler. Well, one real day, and that's today. We're going to get to a 9 today here in the city of Winnipeg. And I'm looking at satellite imagery right now. We had a lot of cloud cover that's still just continuing to move to the southeast corner. So Winnipeg is still, I'd say from where our vantage point is, mostly cloudy, but that's gonna give way to sunshine. But later this afternoon, we could see rain, a 60% chance of showers. Also today, with the warm temperatures from gusty winds from the southwest, gusting to 50. So we'll see that 9, windy, and some rain late in the afternoon. 60% chance is a pretty good chance. Tonight we'll dip down to a -2. Could see some more showers ending late this evening. Then will be partly cloudy. Wind gusts are still gonna be windy overnight to about 40 kilometers per hour overnight. Tomorrow, sunshine and 1. Wednesday, a mix of sun and cloud and 0. And then here's the daytime high for Thursday, Marcy. -8 in sunshine, -7 in sunshine. But we have sunshine pretty much through Wednesday till Sunday from what the forecast is that I am seeing. So cold and clear, we will say, for the next several days. I will just mention briefly here, just go up north for a second. A winter storm watch is in effect for Churchill, York regions. Could be blizzard conditions tonight through till Thursday. Yeah, so that is happening up in the north. And we have a freezing rain warning for the Shamattawa region, and that could taper off by late morning. So just to let you know that is happening. So we're up 1 in the past hour. We're back at 5. Brandon is still -3 and clear, and Thompson is -2. In traffic, that situation affecting northbound Keewatin at Selkirk. There's a collision there. It's been tying up traffic for the past hour. You can't get, as of a few minutes ago, you can't get northbound on Keewatin, and it was impacting southbound traffic as well in the median lane. So very, very slow going. You might want to take Logan if you're northbound, or go all the way around that area on Route 90 there as well. So just know that is a problem in traffic this morning. 788-3093 if you have an update for me on that situation or any other.
Well, it was a heartbreaking loss for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers last night in Hamilton. The Blue and Gold losing the Grey Cup championship game to the Montreal Alouettes in the last seconds of the fourth quarter. It was a stunning upset for the Bombers, who were heavily favored heading into the game, but Montreal was on a roll and they wanted it. And man, did they play. It was a good game. CBC's Brittany Greenslade's in Hamilton and joins us this morning live from there. Hi there.
Good morning.
Oh, man, covering a loss. I feel your pain.
Yeah.
A tough loss. The Alouettes were huge underdogs coming into the Grey Cup. From where you're sitting this morning, what happened?
Oh, Marcy, it's a tough day. It was a tough night. Devastation, disappointment, despair. It's just a few of the words that are being used to describe last night. It was rough. It was a rough night for the Bombers, and it's a game they're not going to forget. The loss is one that has hit all of the players incredibly hard. Wasted season, let down, difficult, sad. Those are just a few of the ways it was described to us by players after the game. It was the Bombers' game to lose, and it happened with just seconds to go. The Blue and Gold started off strong. We ended that first half up 17-7 over the Alouettes, and the team was still ahead with just 13 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Cody Fajardo throwing that touchdown pass to Tyson Philpott, and it was enough to take the cup. And in the end, it was just truly a heartbreaking 28-24 loss for the Bombers. For the Alouettes, their first CFL title since 2010. For the Bombers, there'll be some time to go over what happened and what could have been done better. But Coach Mike O'Shea says right now, there's nothing he can say to the players that's going to take that sting away.
No, nothing they're going to hear right now. It takes a while for them to be able to listen, hear things. It's too fresh. When you recap a season, that's a little ways down the road right now. Right now it's just, fresh, painful loss.
Coach O'Shea had a hard time getting some of those words out during that press conference last night, but he did have a few comments for the winning team as well.
This game was good for the league in terms of the back and forth right down to the wire, scoring right at the end, lead changes. Cody had full marks to Cody, I don't know what the numbers look like, but it doesn't matter. He's the winning quarterback right now. Yeah, We took the ball away too. Yeah, that's taking points right off the board there. Yeah, they're good defense. So is ours.
Man, it was tough all the way around. You can hear it in their voices. You mentioned a little bit what you heard from players, but tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, Marcy, as they walked off the field, first you could hear the anger, and then you could feel that sadness. There were a few loud screams that pierced the hallway right off the field as the players made their way back to the locker room. Honestly, it was tough to watch. It was an ending that no one wanted to see, especially those guys on the field. Quarterback Zach Collaros walked into the media room to take questions, and you could see the emotion on his face. This was a loss that hurt bad.
Sad, disappointed. Disappointed is probably the wrong word. Sad, you play to win the game, you play to win the last one, then we came up short. Montreal was a few plays better than us. Which is really sad. Because there's just a lot of good guys in the locker room, and guys that might not be able to play again, and you want to win for them, and the guys that could be out there. And yeah, there's a lot of good people. You just don't want to let people down. It's terrible.
I know, Brittany, I was in the locker room and I have this visceral memory. It was like Doug Brown's last season, and being in the locker room, they had lost in the Grey Cup that year as well. And it was just being in there, just feeling the emotion and watching him sit there and hang his head. And because these are careers, right? And you don't know what people are going to do next year in Bombers. So you feel it. So what was it like for you being in the locker room after the loss?
You could hear that heavy sigh in Collaros' voice in that last clip there, and his eyes were welling up. You could tell he'd been crying there as he spoke to us. But it was a quiet locker room. It was somber. You could hear that pin drop when we walked in. This was the second Grey Cup loss in a row for the Bombers. They weren't able to hold it off against the Toronto Argonauts last year. And for the players, they say this one stung even worse. Running back Brady Oliveira was in tears when we first attempted to even talk to him. He put his head between his hands and began weeping. He actually left the room for a bit to have some time to collect himself in private before he came back to speak to us. You know how much it meant to these players. You could see it inside that room. And for Oliveira, he's a player that leaves everything out on the field, and he had an incredible game. He still felt guilty about possibly not doing enough. He told us he felt like he let his team down. He felt like it was a waste of a season. And this was also him coming off winning the most outstanding Canadian at the CFL Awards on Thursday night.
Yeah, I didn't care about those awards. I said it, if I walked away with 2 awards, 1 award, 0 awards, this is what it's all about. You go through so much throughout the year. You want to win these games. You want to win it for the guy next to you. And your coaches that put in countless hours for game planning. And, it feels like it's all a waste. My season that I had this year, it's a waste. I didn't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. I didn't have any individual goals set. I want to help my team, help my city win a championship, and we didn't get it done. Yeah, it sucks. It's gonna go with me for a bit into this offseason for sure, just because of just the guy I am, the way I play this game. I hope everyone can see it through the TV that I play my ass off for my team, for my city, my teammates, and I really wanted to just win one for the guys that have never got to experience it. My running back coach, I never got to win one yet, so just gonna bounce back from this. I'll use this as more motivation. I'm already hungry as is, and go into the off season, and we'll be back, and we'll play in another Grey Cup for sure.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about this morning, Brittany, we're hearing from players, but we were almost without 2 of the top players on the Bombers due to injuries. So both actually managed to play. People were surprised at the game time decision. But what did Adam Bighill or Dalton Schoen have to say?
Yeah, well, I'll say from Coach O'Shea, we talked and heard from him around 4 o'clock local time here. The game started at 6 o'clock local time. And at that point, he still didn't know if either of them were going to play. He said they were giving them up until the very last minute, that half-hour mark before game time. Linebacker Adam Bighill entered the game with a right calf injury. He was in a walking boot when he arrived here in Hamilton. And minutes ahead of the game, you could see he was in game mode. He had his headphones on. He was not going to be standing on those sidelines without playing. Receiver Dalton Schoen has been out since the beginning of October. He has an ankle injury, and he says he took that loss to heart. But really, he thanked his coach and the training staff for even letting him go out there last night.
And it doesn't get easier. We obviously had this last year, and it hurts just as bad now. And it's kind of hard to put into words, that feeling, but to watch another team celebrate, it hurts. I obviously wasn't full out there. I was limited a bit physically, but felt like I was good enough to play. The training staff and coach thought I was good enough to play and help the team in whatever capacity I could. And so, obviously in an ideal world, you'd be full. But, at this point in the year, not anyone really is. So I was, again, really grateful for the opportunity. It means the world, I don't know many coaches out there that would be okay with the player not practicing for 6 weeks and then throwing them into a championship game. But coach believes in us as players, and so I really appreciate him, and like I said, I really appreciate the training staff for working so hard with me these last 6 weeks to get me back out there.
Finally, I want to ask about the fans. A lot of Bomber fans making the trek to Hamilton to be in the stands. What did they share with you outside the stadium last night?
Oh, Marcy, you could hear how hard it was for the players. It was tough for their fans, too. Many were hoping to see that cup come back to Winnipeg. So many started that day so confident. In the tailgate, we were talking to them. They were sure this was going to happen. But in the end, a second year in a row of heartbreak. Many spoke about that disappointment of not winning. But what we did hear repeatedly was just how good that game was, even if they lost. Fans say they're already looking forward to next season, but it might take a little bit of time to get over last night's game.
Yeah, the dynasty that just can't quite clinch the Grey Cup now 2 years in a row for many people watching. Different reasons, different games last year and this year, but congrats to Montreal. We're hearing that here at home too, Brittany. You'll hear it all over the streets when you get back to Winnipeg. It really was a good game. Yeah. All right, take care. Thank you for your coverage. Yeah, thank you. Travel safe, you guys. So Brittany Greenslade is out there with Jason Empson from CBC. She's given us a post-game Grey Cup debrief. She's still in Hamilton this morning. A couple final comments to fans. People were writing on my Facebook page last night at the end of the game. Jim Taylor saying, with close ties to both teams, I'm happy it was a close game between equally matched teams, an exciting game for sure. And then finally, Brian Campbell saying, I always hate hearing at the beginning of the game, the Bombers, the odds-on favorite, and Montreal is not expected to have a chance. But right now I know, he says right away, I know the underdogs are just dying to prove everyone wrong. And the favorites might go into the game overconfident. So Brian weighing in saying, I didn't think it was a bad game. It was exciting to the final seconds, but Montreal just wanted it more. The Bombers did well. The Alouettes did better. Next year will be our year.
This is your heart. This is your heart after discovering a new CBC podcast. These are your feet. These are your feet after finding a CBC music playlist. This is your brain. This is your brain after hearing your favorite CBC radio show. Fall in love at first listen with the CBC Listen app. Stream CBC audio anytime, anywhere, all for free. Download CBC Listen today.
8:25 a.m. is the time right now. Partly cloudy and 4 degrees in the city of Winnipeg this morning, and you are listening to CBC. Thank you so much for being with us, making us part of the start of your week here. Well, let's turn our attention to politics nationally. If you have been following the political opinion polls in this country, you know that they paint a challenging picture for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. According to the polling website 338, if an election were held now, the Conservative Party under Pierre Poilievre would get 40% of the popular vote, when the Liberals would only get 27%. That would likely mean a majority Conservative government federally. Yesterday, Cross Country Checkup asked callers if a federal election happened today, would you vote differently? And what is pushing you to switch parties? Of course, given that the Liberals have their results as they have now. Here's what some of the callers share with Ian Hannah-Mansing.
If there was an election today, and whenever there is one, I'm definitely not voting Liberal. And I certainly wouldn't vote Conservative. The federal Liberals, Trudeau's Liberals, they really need the voters that move between Liberal and NDP. They need those voters. And I think they're going to lose a big chunk of them because of their foreign policy.
I think Pierre Poilievre's housing policy is very clear, having the cities be able to build more homes for Canadians. A year ago, I moved from Ottawa to Calgary just because I couldn't buy a home in Ottawa. I shouldn't have to move to be able to buy a home.
Of all the other issues, nothing is important as the environment. The wildfires, the floods, the really hot weather we've had, and the higher levels of water, the ocean levels. The only party I can see that is concerned is the Green Party. I figured I should put my vote where it's going to count. But now I think it's just I've got to change my vote. I've got to put where my heart is, even though they may not do that well, unfortunately.
Some callers on Cross Country Checkup yesterday on CBC with Ian Hannamansing. The question was, if a federal election happened today, would you vote differently than you did last time, and what would push you to switch your vote? If you want to hear all of the conversation, you can always go to cbc.ca/checkup, and you can check out the CBC Listen app for episodes as well. It's 8:27 a.m. on 89.3. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. And ahead of news time, we have time to slide in a bit of a tune. So this is a tune from a Canadian singer-songwriter, Allison Russell, whose music you may have heard before. This is from her latest album. It's called The Returner. The tune's called Stay Right Here. Morning. Thank you, Allison Russell. Tune's called Stay Right Here. Well, we're going to keep this underneath us to the news, but I do want to mention something going on northbound Keewatin at Selkirk. We had a collision there. We've got people responding on scene, so the northbound lanes are blocked. You're best in traffic to avoid the area. We're going to let Allison Russell take us to your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning, I'm Lauren Donnelly in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's 3 degrees and mostly cloudy at the airport. Mainly sunny today, a chance of showers late this afternoon, windy with a high of 9 degrees. Hundreds of people rallied downtown yesterday calling for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Zahia was among the many people at the rally, and she lived in Gaza as a child. She says many people there are scared and don't know what's going to happen.
You can't sleep well. You can't having your regular day like anyone, because you feel like, I don't know, you feel bad.
She says participating in the rallies is the least she can do to show her support. The Prime Minister has held off calling for a ceasefire despite the demands of some. The government is instead backing a sustained pause in the fighting to get aid in and hostages out. A delegation of about 60 Canadians has arrived in Israel. It includes a group of 5 MPs, including Liberal Anthony Housefather. He calls the visit a bipartisan solidarity mission in support of Israel. 3 Conservatives have made the trip, along with 2 Liberals. Housefather says the delegation understands that Israelis want to ensure the events of October 7th never happen again. Meanwhile, there are reports of heavy fighting near yet another hospital in the Gaza Strip. This is the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. It appears there are dozens of fatalities following overnight Israeli airstrikes. Here at home, an assault charge has been stayed against an RCMP officer who kneeled on a man's neck during an arrest. Constable Eric Garian was charged in 2022 after video of the 2019 arrest at the Winnipeg airport came to light. That charge was stayed earlier this month after the Crown said there was no longer a reasonable likelihood of conviction. Ian Scott is the former head of Ontario's police watchdog, the Special Investigations Unit. Scott says the video alone should be enough for the case to go to trial.
I believe the video cries out for an explanation, and regrettably, the public will be denied that explanation.
Scott says he thinks the charge being stayed sends a troubling message. The city of Winnipeg plans to test out shatterproof glass in bus shelters. It's part of an effort to curb vandalism as the city struggles to keep up with repairs. Janice Lukes is chair of the Public Works Committee.
It's an incredible, durable material, but it's 2 to 3 times the cost. So we're going to have to be really strategic on where these, if we proceed with that.
Nearly 300 bus shelters have had broken glass this year. That's about a third of all bus shelters in the city. Currently, 115 are still missing glass. Luke says at least one bus shelter will get the impact-resistant glass in the coming months. The location of it won't be released publicly to prevent anyone trying to deliberately damage it. A suspicious item in a compost bin prompted a response from the Winnipeg Police Services bomb unit yesterday. Police say they received a report of the item in the back alley of the 400 block of Agnes Street Sunday morning. They treated it as an improvised explosive device. Nearby homes were evacuated and the bomb unit executed a controlled detonation of the item. It turned out not to contain any explosive materials. Police say their major crimes unit has now taken over the investigation. Well, one of the hard truths of pro sports began to set in right after the Blue Bombers lost in the Grey Cup last night. Winnipeg Blue Bombers running back Brady Oliveira says it will be hard not seeing the same group together next year. He says the chemistry the team had this year was more special than in years past.
I got so emotional because it's not going to be the same group next year. That's just the reality of the CFL. So that sucks, man.
Winnipeg fell 28-24 against Montreal last night. It's the second year in a row they lost in the Grey Cup. While the Blue Bombers didn't win last night, it wasn't a loss for everyone. John Geary and his family watched the game at the Victoria Hospital with their mother, Doreen, who is 94. He says they had a special night together despite the end result.
It was good to see her in the highs and the lows. She was very humbled. It was a nail-biter towards the end, and she had an exaggerated sad face at the end of the game, like a majority of Winnipeg fans, I'm sure. But we're humbled in defeat.
He says Doreen's status as a lifelong Blue Bombers fan won't change after last night. Finally, analysts say it appears Canada's inflation rate took another dip last month. Early numbers suggest the biggest factor is falling gas and food prices. This prediction comes a day ahead of Statistics Canada's latest inflation update. The inflation moved down to 3.8% in September. And any further declines will be welcome news for the Bank of Canada as it looks for evidence of a sustained slowdown in consumer price growth. That is your CBC News from Winnipeg.
All right. Thanks a lot, Lauren.
Thanks, Marcy.
Lauren Donnelly and Joni Nicolo in our news center this morning. Thank you. Our live crew, Pat Kanuga, Abby Adeyemi, and Travis Peterson behind our CBC YouTube, Manitoba YouTube channel controls. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for listening. We're about to do last look at weather traffic, but I want to do a shout out, Pat. We got to thank Jim Agapito. People wonder what the work is really like. Jim was here till after 3 a.m. just making sure that all the bomber tape coming in and everything was covered on the show this morning. Yay, Jim. Okay, what do we got?
Some showers right now around Morris, Steinbach area. Just a few little ones moving through, and the cloud cover is moving southeast. Winnipeg is still mostly cloudy. We're going to see sunshine in the next couple of hours, though, and we expect to see sunshine. And a 9 today, a 1 tomorrow. We could see rain later today, though, here in Winnipeg. Then later in the week, a -8 and a -7 by Thursday, Friday for your daytime highs. So enjoy this warm one today. Have a fabulous Monday, everyone. It's 5 degrees in the downtown right now.
Thanks again, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And thanks to all of our associate producers in our current affairs unit at CBC Manitoba and our leaders in unit, Nellie Gonzalez and Leif Larson. Coming up next, it's The Current on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa.
This is one of the absolute worst sites for degraded microplastics. This is what's coming across the Pacific. It's just unbelievable.
We are surrounded by plastic. Much of it ends up in landfills, some of it in rivers, oceans, and in natural spaces. Last week, courts dealt a major blow to the Canadian government's efforts to ban single-use plastics. In 30 minutes, the fight to keep plastic bags and other items out of our environment, and how activists in Kenya may offer a path